Hey guys, tonight we slip quietly through time, right to the heart of a Roman evening, where the city glows gold and the dinner hour approaches with all the promise and peril of a night you might never forget. The air is thick with olive oil and distant laughter, torches flicker in the breeze, and the cobbled streets of Rome are alive with footsteps, secrets and the shivering anticipation of another grand feast. You can practically taste the excitement, or is that just the whiff of garum wafting down from someone's window? Welcome to a world where every meal is a performance, and every bite could change your fate. Don't get too comfortable though. You probably won't survive this dinner party with your dignity completely intact. The Romans didn't just invent aqueducts and straight roads. They perfected the fine art of making dinner both dazzling and dangerous. So before we go any further, if this quiet space makes you feel even a little less alone, you can like the video and subscribe, but only if it feels right to your heart. And hey, I'd love to know where you're listening from. Are you lying awake in a quiet room at 2 a.m, or maybe starting your day in a rainy city? Eyes still heavy? Drop your time and place in the comments. Let's remind each other we're not alone out here. Now, dim the lights, let your shoulders relax, and let's begin tonight's slow, strange journey, together, here on Timeless Sleep. The night is falling on Rome, and the city is a living, breathing thing, one that seems to stretch and yawn as the sun melts behind the hills. You walk down a winding street where stone walls are painted with ancient graffiti, little love notes and sharp-tongued complaints from neighbors. The lamps are being lit one by one, their orange glow turning the shadows into a kind of soft velvet. Even the sounds are different now. No more hammering from the blacksmith, no more shouting from the forum, just the low hum of conversation and the soft pad of sandal-clad feet. You glance up at a townhouse set back from the street, all columns and tiled roofs, and realize you're about to be swept into a world that makes your own kitchen table look like a picnic in the park. This isn't just any dinner. It's an invitation to dine with one of the wealthiest families in the city. Your stomach flutters, and not just from hunger. Here, every step is a test, every word a puzzle, and every morsel a chance to shine, or slip spectacularly. Before you even cross the threshold, you feel the eyes on you. There's the porter at the door, sizing you up with a glance as sharp as a gladiator's blade. Are your clothes just right? Did you remember to brush off that bit of dust? If you show up in a wrinkled tunic, you might as well have arrived wearing a sign that says country cousin. The stakes are high. Imagine trying to walk a tightrope while juggling grapes, bread and 3 conversations about politics, all before dessert. Inside, the scents swirl together, baking bread, sweet wine, something roasting slowly on a spit. There's laughter echoing from the inner courtyard and the clink of glasses. It's easy to forget, as you step into the cool, marble-floored entryway, that even the grandest feasts start with small, nervous moments. You wipe your sweaty palms discreetly on your cloak and try to look as if you do this sort of thing all the time. Your invitation came rolled and tied with a red ribbon, a small scroll with your name written in bold, practiced letters. You weren't the only one to receive such an honor tonight. Across the city, others are preparing, straightening their togas and practicing the polite nothings they'll whisper as they pass each other in the atrium. But you tonight, you are the main character in this story, and every detail matters. What you say, how you greet the host, the way you accept that first bite of olive or bread, all of it will be remembered, sometimes longer than you'd like. Pause for a moment and listen to the city breathing around you. Someone is plucking a lyre in a nearby courtyard. Children chase each other, their laughter skipping down the street. From above, you catch a burst of argument, a mother scolding her son for forgetting to wash before dinner, not just his hands, but behind his ears too. Even in ancient Rome, mothers never miss a spot. You can feel the nerves fluttering beneath your ribs. The Roman dinner table isn't just about food, it's about spectacle, strategy, and sometimes survival. For the elite, a dinner is as much a battlefield as any fought with swords and shields. Guests jockey for position, literal position, as in who gets the best couch, and social position, as in who gets the best gossip. One wrong move, and you could be eating alone next time. Or worse, the subject of a dozen whispered stories by the morning. But for now, you're just outside the front door, staring up at the flickering lamplight and the gleam of polished marble. In the shadows you spot other guests arriving, some with servants in tow, others walking confidently alone. You try to remember the advice you heard earlier in the day. Keep your chin up, but not too high. Smile, but not like a fool. Speak, but never first. You wonder if you should have written this down on your hand, just in case. The invitation you hold is a golden ticket, but also a challenge. Romans don't just invite anyone. You must have done something right to be here, or at least not done something so wrong as to be left off the list. There's a strange thrill in being chosen, maybe. Your host wants to impress you, or maybe you're here to fill out the numbers. Maybe you're here as the entertainment. Every dinner party needs someone to gossip about. The trick is making sure it's not you. Your mind races as you picture the other guests. A senator with bushy eyebrows and opinions, even bushier. His wife, rumored to have the sharpest tongue in the city and the most elaborate hairpins. That poet, who recites verses after too much wine. And then, the quiet cousin from the provinces who's always getting lost in the garden. You hope they're all in a generous mood tonight. Standing outside, you take a slow, steady breath. There's a kind of electricity in the air. Maybe it's the promise of the feast, or maybe it's the fear of spilling wine on your lap in front of half the Senate. Either way, you have to step forward, push the door, and take your place in the long, delicious line of Roman history. The city hums behind you, but inside, another world is waiting. A world where bread is broken, secrets are shared, and fortunes can rise or fall on the flick of a spoon. The doorman greets you with a careful bow, eyes flicking over your outfit and your expression. This is your first test. Do you greet him with a smile, a nod, or just a muttered salve? Choose wisely, because in Rome, even the servants keep score. If you're lucky, he lets you in with a murmured bene veniatis, welcome. If you're unlucky, he just stares, waiting for you to try again. Pro tip: salve with a friendly but not fake smile usually works. Inside, the light changes. It's cooler, gentler, almost blue. The walls are painted with scenes of gods and heroes. Some you recognize, some you pretend to. The floor is so clean you almost hesitate to step on it. You pause to take it all in, but only for a moment. After all, you don't want to seem like a tourist. In the atrium, the sounds of laughter and conversation are louder, bouncing off the stone. A fountain bubbles gently in the corner, and a few people stand around, pretending not to size each other up. You catch a glimpse of your host, tall, elegantly dressed, and somehow both welcoming and intimidating. He glides from group to group, greeting each guest with the perfect mix of warmth and subtle reminder that this is after all his house. You make a mental note to remember every detail. This could be useful one day, or at the very least, good material for your own dinner party stories. Someone hands you a small cup of wine, a starter sip, meant to settle nerves and lubricate conversation. It's sweet and slightly spicy, and you wonder if you should sip or gulp. Sip. Always sip. Unless you want to be known as the guest who drained their cup before the first course. The room is filling up now. You spot the senator, the poet, the cousin, and a few faces you don't recognize. One, a foreign merchant with rings on every finger. Another, a statuesque woman draped in a silk stola that seems to catch the light in ways you didn't know were possible. People are already maneuvering for position, jockeying for the best seats near the host, the freshest air and the farthest distance from the kitchen door, which apparently is where the least favoured guests are banished. A servant glides past with a tray of olives, cheese and tiny fried fish. You're tempted to grab a handful, but remember the first rule: never be greedy. Take one, nod your thanks, and move on. This is a marathon, not a sprint, and you don't want to be full before the main event. A group of musicians warms up in the corner, plucking at strings and humming softly. There's a sense of something about to happen, a shared anticipation that binds everyone together. You realize that tonight isn't just about food, it's about performance. Every gesture, every laugh, every raised eyebrow is part of a show, and you're both the audience and the actor. Someone nearby whispers a joke about the last dinner party here, when a senator accidentally sat on a grape and stained his toga purple, an event still whispered about in certain circles. You stifle a smile and hope your own fate is less colourful. You drift closer to the inner courtyard, where the air smells of night-blooming flowers and roasting meat. A servant pauses to refill your cup, and you realize that even the smallest gestures matter. A thank you, a kind word, a compliment about the music. These are the things that will be remembered. Sometimes long after the taste of the wine has faded, there's a sense of history pressing in around you. How many guests have stood here, nervously smoothing their clothes, trying to make the right impression? How many fortunes have been made or lost over the dinner table? How many alliances forged with a simple nod or a shared joke? You catch your reflection in a polished bronze mirror, cheeks flushed, eyes bright, a little nervous, but determined. Tonight you're part of something bigger than yourself. You're stepping into a tradition that stretches back centuries, a ritual as old as the city itself. The doors to the dining room open at last, and a hush falls over the crowd. It's time. You smooth your tunic, take one last steadying breath, and step forward into the candlelit world of the Roman feast. You don't know exactly what awaits you, but you're ready, or at least as ready as anyone can be. And somewhere deep down, you know this is a night you'll remember, not just for the food and the laughter, but for the way it feels to belong, even for just a moment, to the strange, beautiful world of ancient Rome. A waiting continues. You cross the threshold into the Roman Domus, and for a second, you're half blinded by the sudden coolness, the flicker of lamps, and the rush of colour. Outside, the world still pulses with the day's heat and clamour, but in here, everything is sharper, more deliberate, touched by the steady hum of expectation. Even the air tastes different. Lemon oil on polished marble, smoke from a distant censer, the faintest sweetness of lilies floating in a shallow fountain. The doorkeeper, a slave with the posture of a seasoned bouncer, closes the heavy door behind you and offers a practiced smile, one that says welcome and behave yourself all at once. This first moment matters more than you might think. In ancient Rome, every entrance is an entrance, a performance, a message, a first move in the evening's subtle chess game. You stand just inside, letting your eyes adjust, pretending you aren't taking mental notes on everyone and everything. Who's whispering in the corner? Who's greeting the host with just a bit too much enthusiasm? Whose sandals look suspiciously cheap for someone invited to this table? Social climbing is a full-time job here, and even the most innocent gesture can speak volumes. As you step further in, the atrium opens up in front of you, marble floors gleaming, walls splashed with vibrant frescoes, Venus on a seashell, Mercury dancing over clouds, the occasional hero wrestling something half goat, half nightmare. You notice a cluster of small clay lamps burning near the household shrine, where a few family members or perhaps the more pious guests have paused to offer a quick word to the household gods. No harm in hedging your bets. Even the boldest Roman knows the gods are always watching, especially at dinner. A servant appears almost instantly, eyes lowered, arms crossed respectfully. "Shoes, please," she murmurs, holding out a woven basket. That's right, no muddy footprints on the host's precious mosaics. You untie your sandals and place them carefully in the basket, hoping you remember to clean your feet. If not, may the gods have mercy. You'll be judged for every stray speck of dust. Guests mingle in the atrium, forming eddies of laughter, quick greetings, the occasional conspiratorial glance. There are rules to all of this, unwritten but universally understood. If you've ever tried to blend in at a party where everyone seems to know each other and you're not sure which cheese is safe to eat, you've had a taste, just a taste of what Roman social etiquette demands. Except here, the stakes are higher, and the cheese might be made from sheep, goat, or something more mysterious. A servant glides past with a silver tray of wine. You accept a cup, nodding thanks, and try to remember how to hold it. Never by the rim, that's for children, but gently by the stem, so you don't warm the drink or leave greasy fingerprints. You watch as other guests, veterans of this scene, glide from group to group, their togas perfectly draped, their laughter pitched, just so. You copy the rhythm, the little shrugs and half smiles, until you almost start to believe you belong. Your host appears, radiant and poised, flanked by his closest friends. His toga is bright white, edged in deep purple, the mark of a senator or a man who knows how to rent one. He shakes your hand, welcoming you with a phrase you've rehearsed, "Gracias ago pro invitatione." Thank you for the invitation. His eyes flicker, maybe surprised you got the pronunciation right. Maybe you didn't, and he'll remember it for next time. Either way, you're in. It's impossible to overstate how much this initial greeting matters. A too strong handshake? You're a barbarian. Too soft? Weak. Avoid eye contact? Secretive. Stare too long? Creep. The Romans might not have invented the awkward hug, but they would have made it an Olympic event if they could. You glance around trying to read the room, but the room is reading you right back. You notice who gets a two-handed shake, who gets a nod, who's offered a joke or a gentle pat on the shoulder. It's all encoded in the pecking order. Rank, relationship, reputation, all rolled into one seamless display. The real dinner, you start to suspect, is already underway, and it's being served with a side of sly glances and subtle digs. Some guests carry gifts for the host. A bottle of spiced wine, a painted figurine, a garland of flowers. If you remembered to bring something, congratulations. You've just earned a gold star for Roman manners. If not, you can always offer a compliment on the host's new mosaic, even if you have no idea what it's supposed to be. Is that a hippocampus or just a really ambitious fish? Careful though, Romans love their in-jokes, and you could end up the punchline. As you circulate, you notice the invisible dance of status at work. The most important guests stand closest to the center, basking in the glow of the host's attention. Lesser mortals hover at the edges, pretending not to care that their conversation is being drowned out by the laughter of those closer in. You take your place, close enough to observe, not so close as to overstep. Tonight is a marathon, not a sprint, and the rules favor patience. A bell rings softly from the Reclining, the formal dining room. It's the cue everyone has been waiting for. Conversations wrap up. Last sips of wine are drained, and the crowd begins to flow in that direction, as if drawn by some invisible current. The host leads, of course, his family and honored guests just behind. The rest of you fall in line, pretending you're not counting heads or mentally calculating who outranks whom. Before you move, a quick, nervous glance at your own clothes. Your tunic is straightish, your hair is behaving, mostly, and you've managed to keep your hands free of olive oil. The first challenge is behind you, but as every Roman knows, there are 100 more between you and dessert. You pass through an arched doorway, its frame painted with twisting vines and little birds pecking at grapes. Beyond it, the triclinium glows with lamplight and the low, steady murmur of anticipation. The walls are covered with more frescoes, this time scenes of lavish banquets and reclining gods, as if to remind you, whatever happens tonight, it's all been done before, probably by Jupiter himself, with better wine. At the entrance, another servant appears with a bowl of rosewater. You dip your fingers, feeling the cool liquid run over your skin, and dry them on a soft towel. This isn't just for cleanliness, it's a ritual, a pause, a chance to shed the outside world and step into the dream of the feast. For the truly status savvy, it's also a moment to show off the right rings, the well-tended nails, the unruffled composure. Your place at the table isn't really a seat at all, but a spot on one of 3 long, cushioned couches that ring the central table in a horseshoe shape. This is the triclinium's magic trick. Everyone's together, yet everyone's apart. The most honoured guests get the prime spots, the lectus medius middle couch, and the place closest to the host. Farther out, the guests of lesser status, or those who've accidentally insulted the host's mother, get the less desirable positions, nearest the door or the kitchen. In Rome, as in life, where you recline matters almost as much as what you say. You slip onto your assigned couch, careful not to wrinkle your tunic or elbow your neighbour in the ribs. There's a kind of choreography to it. Lean left, prop yourself on your elbow, let your feet dangle away from the table. If you've never eaten a meal lying on your side, congratulations, tonight is your chance to look elegant, or at least not fall off. Don't worry, everyone's first time is awkward. Just don't mention the last time you ate dinner on the floor, because the cat took your chair. Around you, the chatter builds, gossip about who's been promoted, whose new villa is more impressive, who arrived with the wrong guest or the wrong shoes. Someone tells a joke about a senator who mistook a peacock feather for a quill and signed his own toga. It gets a laugh. But you notice who laughs hardest. In Rome, even jokes are currency. The host, now seated with a view of the entire room, raises his hand for quiet. The meal is about to begin, and suddenly, every eye is on him. He welcomes his guests with a short speech, part gratitude, part gentle boasting, and a small prayer to the household gods. There's applause, a few well-placed cheers, and the first course is brought in, small bites meant to tease the palate and spark conversation. Servants move like shadows, refilling wine, offering olives, setting down platters of cheese and fruit. You thank them with a nod, never too familiar, never too distant. It's a delicate balance, the dance of gratitude and authority. Some guests ignore the servants entirely, poor form, while others offer whispered words or even a coin for especially attentive service. Clever, but don't be too obvious. If you're clever, you let the conversation swirl around you, dipping in now and then with a clever observation or an approving smile. Don't interrupt, but don't disappear. Rome loves a witty guest, but detests a show-off. If you can manage to be charming without being insufferable, you might just get invited back. You reach for a honeyed fig, pop it in your mouth, and try not to choke when the senator's wife launches into a story about her last dinner with Julius Caesar's cousin. The punchline: he mistook fish sauce for wine. The lesson: even the highest can fall, and everyone else loves to remember it. You sip your wine, slowly, remember, and notice the shifting alliances already at play. Two senators are locked in a quiet debate, each waiting for the other to say something foolish. Across the room, a pair of poets swap verses, while the merchant gestures expansively about the silk trade. You smile, nod, and make a mental note. Always have a story ready, just in case someone asks you to prove you belong. Through it all, the host's eyes miss nothing. He knows who arrived late, who complimented the wrong fresco, who laughed at the wrong joke. In Rome, the host is more than a provider. He's a conductor, a director, a judge. And tonight you're on stage. As the first course ends and the conversation deepens, you realize the evening is only beginning, and the real tests of manners, wit, and endurance lie ahead. For now, you've crossed the threshold, passed the first set of silent examinations, and taken your place at the table. The feast is about to unfold. But just remember, one wrong move, one spilled cup, one awkward pause, and you could find yourself the star of tomorrow's gossip. So relax, but not too much. Laugh, but not too loudly. And above all, pay attention. In Rome, dinner is always more than dinner. It's survival of the wittiest. You settle into the atrium, the true heart of a Roman house, a place that hums with secret history, expectation, and the fragrance of crushed laurel leaves. The clatter and voices from the entrance melt away, and suddenly you're adrift in the shimmering stillness that only a wealthy domus can create. Mosaics underfoot, blue shadows flickering from the impluvium where rainwater waits for thirsty plants, and a steady pulse of light and life that makes every guest feel, for a moment, like the center of the world. You try not to gawk, but how can you not, when the walls are painted with bold splashes of ochre and cinnabar, their frescoes telling tales of gods and monsters and the odd dinner disaster, Jupiter flinging thunderbolts at a spilled amphora, or a mortal caught napping under the table, toga tangled around his ankles. It's here, in the atrium, that the dance of first impressions truly begins. Every step, every gesture is a clue, every detail is a signal. You're both performer and audience, and even the most seasoned Roman can't help but feel the stage lights on them. You sense the glances, some admiring, some appraising, some just curious to see if you'll trip on the edge of the mosaic. No pressure. The very air is thick with judgment and opportunity. Look left. There's a statue of a family ancestor, stern-faced and draped in the stiff folds of a senator's toga, eyes staring off into some imagined battlefield or council hall. Look right. The lararium, the family's private shrine to their household gods, glimmers with tiny flickering lamps and offerings. Nuts, fruit, sometimes a little cup of wine. Someone pauses to mutter a quick prayer, hoping for good luck, or maybe just an easy evening. In Rome, even the gods are expected to mind their manners. Guests gather in little knots around the atrium pool, murmuring about the latest news from the forum. You drift closer, trying to catch the thread of conversation. Someone is fretting about the price of grain. Someone else more quietly wonders if the host's new marble bust actually looks anything like him, or if the sculptor just had a wild imagination and a few too many sips of wine. It's the kind of gentle backbiting that passes for entertainment among the city's best and brightest. It's impossible not to notice the details that set this house and this family apart. The mosaic floors are so brightly coloured they seem to glow, forming patterns of dolphins, sea monsters, and endless vines. The walls bear not just art, but power. Golden wreaths, trophies from games, even a battered old shield supposedly used by an ancestor in a famous battle. You suspect the shield has seen more banquets than blood, but it's impolite to ask. Every corner, every artifact is there to whisper, "Here is where you belong," if you know how to play the game. You're offered a small dish of candied nuts, and without thinking, almost pop one into your mouth. A tiny cough from a nearby guest, just loud enough for you to hear, reminds you, wait until the host gives the sign. In Rome, impatience is almost as bad as eating with the wrong hand. You lower the nut, trying to look as if you were merely admiring its sugar glaze. The guest smiles, not unkindly, and gives you a nod. Rookie mistake, but forgivable. For now. The host appears again, this time accompanied by his wife, whose eyes seem to miss nothing, and whose dress swishes like silk and authority combined. She floats around the room, offering compliments with a precision that borders on military. "You look well," she tells an older guest. "How is your garden this year?" she asks another, who beams as if she's just promised him the world. When she turns to you, her gaze lingers a half-second longer than is strictly comfortable. "I hope you'll find our table welcoming tonight," she says. And in that moment you sense both a promise and a warning. The table will be what you make of it. Conversation swirls as more guests arrive, some familiar, others strangers. A senator, resplendent in his toga praetexta, holds forth on a new law being debated. His voice booms across the room, and when he laughs, everyone else does too. Whether the joke is funny or not, his wife, balancing a cup of watered wine, scans the room for allies and rivals. Near the fountain, a pair of poets debate the merits of Greek cheese versus Roman cheese. The younger one, trying a bit too hard, claims that Roman cheese is for soldiers, Greek cheese for philosophers. You almost ask which cheese is best for dinner guests who just want to survive the evening, but think better of it. There's a moment, a hush almost, when the host pauses by the lawarium, offering a quick prayer. His family gathers with him, and a few guests join in, bowing their heads. You feel a flutter of nervousness. Do you join, or do you stand back? You opt for a polite nod and a look of respectful interest, which seems to satisfy everyone. Religion in Rome is a public affair, but it's also deeply personal, and missteps here can be as costly as at the table itself. After the prayer, a new round of greetings begins. You find yourself standing beside a merchant from the eastern provinces, whose tunic is embroidered in the latest style, and whose sandals gleam suspiciously new. He introduces himself, then immediately asks where you're from. This is another small test, a way to place you, to determine whether you're from a good family, an important city, or just someone who managed to get an invitation through luck or clever networking. You answer as confidently as you can, throwing in a gentle joke about how you're still learning the proper way to tie a toga. The merchant laughs, perhaps a touch too loudly, and claps you on the shoulder. "We all do, friend. Even the emperor sometimes gets his folds wrong." It's the kind of easy camaraderie that makes you feel, if only for a moment, like part of the in crowd. Someone else joins your little group. A dignified woman with silver in her hair and a sharp look in her eye. She's introduced as the host's aunt, and immediately you sense her power. She asks you if you prefer red or white wine, and when you hesitate, she says, "Good answer. Always drink what the host pours." You laugh along with her, feeling a little less nervous. She leans in and whispers, "If anyone tries to tell you the best seat is near the door, don't believe them. That's where the drafts are." Sage advice, and you tuck it away for later. Around you, the atrium is filling up, each guest adding their own current to the social sea. You spot a group of young men, friends of the host's son, whispering about some mischief planned for later. They catch your eye and wink, as if you're already in on the joke. Farther away, a matron in an elaborate hairnet whispers furiously to her daughter about another guest's jewellery. You don't hear the words, but the tone says everything. In Rome, as in every age, the right accessories can make or break your reputation. A servant enters with a tray of garlands. Traditionally, guests wear these flower crowns as a sign of good cheer and to ward off headaches from too much wine. You accept yours with a smile, arranging it carefully atop your hair, hoping it's not crooked. Pro tip: if it slides down over your eyes, just laugh and say you're honoring Bacchus, god of wine and chaos. It's a classic recovery. You glance around, the senator's garland is already wilting, but he wears it like a laurel of victory. The host calls for quiet and all eyes turn to him. He gives a brief welcome, thanking the gods for abundance and his guests for their presence. It's part ritual, part performance, and you realize just how much hinges on these moments. The spoken and the unspoken, the glances, the pauses, the way his hand rests on his wife's arm as he speaks. When he finishes, everyone claps, and the tension in the air seems to relax. The real business of the evening can now begin. As the group begins to move toward the dining room, you find yourself side by side with the merchant again. He leans over and says, "If you get stuck near the senator, just nod and agree. If you get stuck near his wife, run." You grin, but inside you're thinking through every tip, every warning, every little detail. Already, you sense how easily a small blunder could ripple through the night, but just as easily, a small victory, a perfectly timed laugh, a generous word, an artful compliment, could open doors you didn't even know existed. Before you leave the atrium, you take a final look around. It's a room built to impress, but also to include, draw you into the host's world and let you shine, if only for a moment. You step out of the mosaic light and into the golden glow of the triclinium, your head high, your nerves humming, and your heart racing with the possibilities ahead. If you thought the dinner table was just about eating, you're about to learn how much more it can be. In Rome, every detail is a chance to rise or fall, but for now, you've survived the atrium, made your first impression, and joined the river of guests, flowing toward a night you'll never quite forget. You follow the gentle current of laughter, silk and candlelight from the atrium to the next challenge, finding your place among couches and cushions in the mysterious seating puzzle of the Roman triclinium. The hallway narrows, the ceilings soar, and every footstep echoes in the space between eager conversation and the clinking of platters. Somewhere ahead, a musician plucks out a soft, wandering tune, as if trying to calm the nerves of all the guests at once. It doesn't work. You can sense it, the rising anticipation, the quiet, prickly tension that always clings to the start of a great Roman feast. The triclinium opens like a treasure chest, glowing with rows of lamps and the gleam of polished bronze. The room is wide but not endless, and somehow both intimate and grand, a perfect stage for every guest to play their part. The centerpiece, of course, is the U-shaped arrangement of 3 long couches, lectus emus, lectus medius, lectus semus, each plush with cushions and covered in linens, so fine you wonder if they came from Alexandria itself. Around the couches, small tables sparkle under the weight of silver dishes and crystal decanters. It's not just a dining room, it's an arena of status, and you're about to step onto the sand. You pause, not wanting to rush after all. Rushing would betray either panic or over-eagerness, and in Roman society it's best to drift in as if you're in no hurry at all, even if your heart is doing acrobatics behind your ribs. A servant gestures politely for you to proceed. As you walk into the room, you realize the true intricacy of Roman seating. There is no just sit wherever here. Every spot is measured, considered, and fiercely meaningful. The host, always the conductor of this elaborate symphony, stands near the center couch, gesturing for the highest-ranking guests to claim the best seats. There is an art, no, a science, to where you'll recline. The lectus medius, especially the leftmost spot, the locus consularis, is the seat of honor, reserved for the most distinguished, or at least the most useful guest. It's a position of visibility, influence, and let's be honest, maximum bragging rights. The closer you are to the host's right, the greater your social standing is assumed to be. The farther you drift, the less important or more dangerous your place. Some Romans even say you can chart a person's entire life story by watching which couch they end up on at dinner. You shuffle carefully, trying to look nonchalant while also desperately hoping you don't end up right by the kitchen door, where the serving boys and all the kitchen smells come and go in a ceaseless clattering parade. The door seat is where minor relatives, awkward clients, or those on the host's maybe next time list are politely tucked away. No one says this aloud, of course, but everyone knows. The last thing you want is to be within earshot of the swinging doors, destined to hear only scraps of gossip, the scrape of the soup ladle, and the occasional burst of laughter from the better seats. The best seats go fast. The senator, resplendent in purple stripes, is ushered to the coveted corner. His wife, her hair an architectural miracle, claims the spot beside him. The poets and visiting merchants hover with practiced patience, waiting for a cue, watching for a gap in the pecking order. Some try to joke their way up the ladder, others sidle over to a higher-ranking friend, hoping for a spot to open up through the magic of association. You, new to this world but determined, scan for your own opportunity. At last your host's gaze lands on you, and with a small encouraging nod, he gestures toward the middle couch near the end, not the seat of honor, but far from the ignominy of the kitchen door. Relief floods you. You make your way, careful not to step on trailing togas or upend any platters, and take your place, settling into the cushions and letting your nerves unwind by the tiniest degree. You notice your immediate neighbors, a droll poet who already looks bored, but is probably just rehearsing his lines for later, and the merchant you met in the atrium, who gives you a warm conspiratorial smile. It feels like the start of an alliance, or at least a temporary truce. As everyone settles in, you realize there's another layer to the puzzle. The arrangement isn't just about status, it's about conversation, alliances, and the subtle flow of information. The most influential guests aren't just closest to the host, they're within earshot of the best jokes, the latest rumors and the little sparks of wit that turn an ordinary meal into a legend. Those farther out may have to settle for second-hand news, or make their own excitement with whispered side chats and pointed glances. It's a living map of power, and you for tonight are marked on it. A servant brings a small bowl for you to wash your hands. Another ritual, both practical and symbolic. As you dip your fingers in cool rose-scented water, you think about all the hands that have touched these bowls before you. Politicians, poets, generals, lovers, rivals. You dry your hands on a linen cloth, grateful for the chance to pause, breathe, and prepare for what comes next. You lean back, propped up on your left elbow, feet angled away from the table, as is proper. This is the pose of the elite, the practiced posture of those who know that dinner is not merely for nourishment, but for display. It's not as comfortable as you might have imagined. After all, eating sideways is an acquired taste. Your right hand is free for food and wine, while your left supports your weight. You wonder for a moment if any guest has ever toppled off a couch mid-toast. Spoiler, they have, several times. The poets like to recite the stories with extra flair. Your host makes a small circuit, greeting those who have just arrived and sharing a quiet word with those who landed in less favorable spots. His eyes are everywhere, orchestrating the social music, ensuring that every note rings true. When he finally reclines at his own place, the signal is clear. The feast can begin. But not just yet. The hostess, resplendent in silk and silver, signals for silence with a simple gesture, just 2 fingers raised, a movement so graceful it almost seems choreographed. She offers a brief blessing, thanking the household gods for abundance and fellowship, and the guests echo her words, some reverent, some just eager to eat. The first course arrives, small dishes of olives, eggs, cheese, and nuts. You notice everyone watching the host waiting for his subtle nod before reaching for their own share. To jump in too soon is a rookie mistake. To wait too long, equally awkward. The trick is to move just after the host, but not so late as to seem hesitant. You follow along, nabbing a plump olive and popping it into your mouth. The saltiness wakes up your palate, and with it your confidence. Now the real dance begins. Talking, eating, listening, and laughing, all while keeping an eye on the host's mood, the kitchen door, and the latest round of gossip. The poets test out their newest verses, hoping for a ripple of laughter, or at least a polite smile. The merchant regales your little group with a wild story about pirates on the Tyrrhenian Sea, his voice rising and falling with the cadence of a street performer. Even the senator relaxes, letting slip a witty barb about the latest fashion in tunics. So short this year, even the statues are scandalized. Meanwhile, servants dart back and forth, refilling wine cups, offering fresh bread, and clearing away the olive pits with the speed and grace of dancers. It's a marvel of silent coordination, and you try to thank each one with a quick nod. One servant, barely older than a child, gives you a shy grin. And you can't help but return it. For a moment you feel like you're part of something vast and secret, a world spinning on tiny gestures, shared glances, and the gentle rhythm of ancient hospitality. Yet, beneath the laughter, the tension never fully leaves. Every guest is aware that this meal is more than a meal. It's an audition, a battlefield, a living tapestry of ambition, affection, and old grudges. The senator's wife leans over, her voice a whisper of silk, and asks if you've heard the latest news from the Senate. You reply with just enough knowledge to seem informed, but not so much as to invite a debate. The last thing you want is to be talked into a corner before the main course. She nods approvingly, then pivots to another guest, her approval drifting away like a scent in the night. As the meal unfolds, you watch the host for cues: when to laugh, when to lower your voice, when to toast, and when to merely sip. It's exhausting, exhilarating, and oddly comforting. There's a security in the rules, a safety in the tradition. For all its complexity, the Roman feast is a kind of ancient choreography, one you're learning, step by careful step. There's a moment somewhere between the second platter of cheese and the third round of wine, when you catch yourself grinning. You belong. At least for tonight, you've solved the puzzle. You've found your place. But the night is young, the courses many, and the conversation only beginning to unravel its deeper secrets. The greatest test of all, how you handle yourself as the food, the stories and the politics grow richer, still lies ahead. You sink into your assigned place among the couches, cushions and low tables, only to realize that here, what you wear is as much a key as where you sit. In ancient Rome, dress codes are as complex and layered as the politics simmering under every polite smile. Tonight, as you smooth the folds of your tunic and glance around at shimmering togas and brightly colored stolas, you can't help but wonder if your choices will pass inspection or become the punchline for tomorrow's gossips in the forum. Dress, in this world, is far more than decoration. It is a living language, one every Roman must learn to read and speak. Before the first bite is tasted, before a single witty phrase is uttered, your appearance is already telling a story about your origins, your ambitions, and yes, your common sense. So let's rewind a moment and linger on the art and agony of getting dressed for a Roman dinner. You might have imagined, as you laid out your clothes earlier, that the options were straightforward: a tunic, perhaps, or a toga if you wanted to impress. For women, a stola, or pella, maybe a colourful belt, some carefully chosen pins. In reality, the process is as fraught as choosing armour before battle. A Roman dinner isn't just a meal, it's a parade, a test, a walking advertisement for your place in the world. Wearing the wrong thing too plain, too flashy, too foreign, can doom you faster than spilling wine in the host's lap. Take the men, for example. The classic Roman toga, grand, stately, and if you ask any honest citizen, absurdly impractical. It's a huge, heavy length of wool, wrapped and folded with painstaking care. No fasteners, no helpful little ties, just yards of fabric, perfectly draped to show that you not only belong here, but also possess the time, servants and coordination to keep it all together. For senators and those of noble rank, a purple stripe runs along the edge, a subtle VIP pass for the privileged. For everyone else, it's the plain white or off-white of the everyday man, crisp if you're lucky, and if you're very lucky, clean. Then there's the tunic, a simple knee-length garment for men, sometimes with coloured stripes, clavi, running vertically. The wider the stripe, the higher the status. Senators flaunt broad purple clavi, knights display slimmer ones, and the rest do their best with a nice hem and maybe a sturdy belt. Sandals complete the ensemble, unless it's raining, in which case you pray to the gods you remembered to clean your feet. No muddy soles in a Roman dining room ever. Women, meanwhile, turn the act of dressing into an art form worthy of a goddess. The stola, a long flowing dress worn over a simple tunic, signals marriage and respectability for young women or those wishing to project modesty. A palla, a long shawl or cloak, can be draped over the head or shoulders. The real magic, though, is in the details. The hair, the pins, the jewellery. A respectable Roman matron might spend hours, or at least her slaves will, braiding her hair into intricate styles, securing it with ivory combs, gold clasps, even the occasional borrowed pearl if she wants to make a splash. Don't forget the brooches, the necklaces, the earrings, each a silent signal. a line in the endless social conversation. You recall the preparations earlier that evening, the mirror propped on a stand, the rush of water, the hum of voices as everyone in your household scrambled to look their best. Your own reflection looked back, with nervous energy. Is the tunic belted just right? Is the hem straight? Will anyone notice that the embroidery on your sleeve is just possibly last year's style? You try to laugh it off, but in Rome every guest is a critic, and every critic remembers. For a few there's always the temptation to push the boundaries. You spot a dashing young man across the room, wearing a tunic dyed a daring shade of blue, a colour expensive enough to raise eyebrows. Someone else sports a flashy ring set with a stone so big it could anchor a ship. There's the merchant's wife, her hair piled so high it nearly brushes the painted ceiling, her stola shimmering with threads of gold. You notice too the quiet disapproval from some of the older matrons, their own garb more restrained, their jewellery a display of taste rather than wealth. It isn't all about showing off. In Rome, being too lavish can be as risky as being too plain. There's an ancient suspicion of those who flaunt their riches, a lurking worry that the gods or the tax collector might take notice. True elegance, everyone agrees, especially those who can afford it, lies in knowing just how much to reveal, and when. The senator's wife, for instance, wears a single gold bracelet, but it's so finely wrought, so beautifully understated, that you can't help but admire it. It whispers, rather than shouts, "I belong here." Beyond the fabrics and jewellery, there are other signals too. Scent is important. A dash of imported perfume, the clean aroma of fresh linen. Romans pride themselves on cleanliness, and a guest who arrives sweaty, unkempt, or perfumed too heavily will be remembered for all the wrong reasons. You remember hearing the story of a wealthy equestrian who once drenched himself in so much cinnamon oil that his fellow guests couldn't taste their wine for the entire meal. For months afterward, he was known as Cinnamon, and no one wanted to sit beside him again. Shoes, often overlooked by the novice, matter as well. The simplest mistake, a worn strap, a dusty sole, can be the detail that undoes an entire impression. A few guests have changed into elegant slippers for the evening, their outdoor sandals left neatly at the entrance. The servants will later joke about whose shoes are the oldest or the most outlandishly decorated, and sometimes a daring guest will swap a pair just for fun. The real masters, though, know that subtlety wins. Comfort, yes, but never at the expense of appearance. Of course, there are those who break the rules and get away with it. The poet reclining 2 seats away sports a robe so threadbare it could have been woven by a particularly lazy spider. He laughs, raises his cup, and everyone laughs along, because he's brilliant, or infamous, or simply beyond the rules. That's another truth of Roman society. Rules are for everyone, except for those who can rewrite them with enough wit, power, or charm. Your mind drifts for a moment to stories of Roman emperors who took fashion to extremes. Caligula, they say, once attended a banquet dressed in a woman's gown, just to see if anyone would dare comment. Spoiler, they didn't. Nero, ever the performer, filled his halls with actors and dancers in garish costumes, turning dinner into a circus. There are even tales of hosts who demanded their guests wear all black, or come disguised as gods and monsters. You're grateful tonight for the relative sanity of a classic toga party. Now, reclined and resplendent, or at least presentable, you feel the gaze of the room shifting. Some guests appraise your choice of colours, the cut of your tunic, the sheen of your stola. You remember to keep your jewellery to a minimum, your perfume subtle, your shoes tidy. If you're lucky, you'll blend in just enough to be remembered for your wit, not your wardrobe. But here's the secret. Everyone is a little bit anxious. Even the most seasoned Roman feels the tiny prickle of self-doubt. Are the colours too bold? Is the embroidery outdated? Did the dye fade in the wash? One woman near the end of the couch spends the first course tugging at her hem, while her neighbour fiddles with a gold pin that keeps slipping from her hair. The senator's son, barely of age, sits with his knees locked and his tunic bunched up awkwardly, looking like he'd rather face a lion than the critical eyes of Rome's social elite. Still, as the meal progresses, the anxiety settles. Laughter rises, glasses clink, and the unspoken competition of fashion fades into the background, replaced by stories, jokes, and the gentle camaraderie that only comes from shared food and wine. The room glows with the satisfaction of those who know, for this night at least, they have chosen well. Your host, too, takes care to balance the evening's parade of fashion. His own attire is immaculate, but unpretentious, a signal that while he values tradition, he is not here to outshine his guests. The hostess, equally skilled, wears a gown of pale green silk, her jewelry limited to a single string of pearls. The message is clear: true grace lies in balance. And then there's you. You remember the advice whispered to you earlier in the atrium by the host's aunt. Always drink what the host pours, and never wear shoes you can't walk home in. You look down at your own feet, sturdy, comfortable, just polished enough. You smile. For tonight at least, you have played your part well. If you ever attend another Roman feast, you'll remember the lessons of tonight. Dress for the table, but not for the stage. Let your confidence be your finest garment, your humility your best accessory. In a world where every glance is a judgment and every detail a declaration, the guests who shine are those who master the art of blending in just enough to be invited back. And as the next course arrives, platters of roasted fowl, steaming vegetables, bread still warm from the oven, you feel the tension in your shoulders ease. You've made it through the most treacherous part of the evening, the judgment of first appearances. Now, with your place secured and your style mostly approved, you can finally turn your attention to the real pleasure of the night, the feast itself, and the thousand stories waiting to unfold around the flicker of Roman candlelight. There's a lull in conversation, just a moment where the room seems to inhale, and then the triclinium with all its splendor and mystery truly welcomes you. It's more than simply a dining room. It's a setting designed for drama, spectacle, and status. From your spot among the cushions, you can see everything: the swoop of the couches, the proud arch of the host's back as he takes his position, the flicker of lamplight that turns simple bread and oil into something almost sacred. The low tables shimmer with platters of food, jugs of wine, gleaming fruit. Servants dart between couches, as quick and silent as fish in a moonlit pool. If you listen, you'll hear the subtle choreography of a Roman dinner at its peak. The shush of silk, the muted thump of a jug being set down, the not quite whispered observations as guests study each other over their goblets. The room is alive, but the mood is balanced on a knife's edge. This is no free-for-all buffet. In Rome, everything is orchestrated, and nowhere is that more apparent than right now, as the seating puzzle is solved and the table itself becomes a map of influence. You glance across to the senator and his wife, who are engaged in gentle banter with a local magistrate, each word as carefully measured as the gold in their bracelets. Next to you, the merchant is telling a softly risque joke about the time he mistook a prized truffle for a pebble and broke his tooth. His audience, a slim poet and the host's distant cousin, burst out in laughter, but you notice the host himself simply smiles, quietly, never breaking his pose of serene authority. Even the smallest reactions are a signal. Your first test of the evening is simple: how quickly you adapt to this new world. For most guests, the initial uncertainty of where to recline, whom to greet first, or how many olives to take quickly gives way to the easy rhythm of dinner. But it's never truly casual. Every gesture counts. The way you lean back, the confidence of your posture, even the way you drape your napkin over your lap, or in Roman style loosely over your left arm so it's ready to mop up a drop of wine, or, more importantly, catch the crumbs that inevitably tumble from the first crusty loaf. A young servant appears beside you bearing a shallow bowl and a ewer. "Lavare manus?" she asks, and you nod. She pours rosewater over your fingertips, cool and fragrant, and you watch as it pools briefly in the bowl before vanishing, as if the day's anxieties are being washed away with the dust of the streets. This is not simply cleanliness, it's a symbolic act, a transition from the bustle of the city to the intimacy of the feast. There's a faint sense of relief. Here at least you have done the expected, joined the ancient cycle. Across the room, you watch as other guests perform the same ritual, some with practiced indifference, others with fussy attention to detail. The senator's wife lifts her hands as if she's conducting in an invisible orchestra, letting the water run between each perfectly polished nail. The poet dabs his fingertips and then, just to be cheeky, shakes them like a bird fluttering its wings, earning a few quiet chuckles and one very pointed look from a matron nearby. You learn quickly, humour is welcome, but never at the expense of decorum. With hands clean and nerves slightly steadied, you're offered the first round of appetizers. The tray glides your way, and you accept a handful of olives, a wedge of sharp cheese, a sliver of salted fish. It's all bite-sized, designed to be eaten with your fingers, but in a manner that speaks to civilization, not chaos. You note how everyone takes only a little, not piling their plates, but sampling each flavor as if it's the first taste of the season. Roman dinners are marathons, not sprints, and only a newcomer or a barbarian would gobble down the starters before the main show even begins. The conversation around you flows in many directions at once. A dozen topics bouncing off marble and frescoes, news from the forum, rumors of a new law, the rising price of saffron, the latest scandal involving a certain senator's nephew, and a runaway goat. In the midst of it all, your host keeps a watchful eye, subtly guiding the evening with well-placed questions and softly spoken compliments. He inquires after the health of one guest's wife, the progress of another's business, the quality of yet another's imported Spanish wine. It's impressive how he weaves everyone together into a tapestry of belonging, while at the same time making sure the most powerful guests always have the stage. Your own little group is soon caught up in a spirited debate about whether figs or pomegranates are the true sign of a prosperous household. The merchant argues for figs, claiming their sweetness is unmatched, while the poet launches into a whimsical ode about the mysteries of pomegranate seeds. You chime in with a memory of a fig tree from your childhood, its fruit so abundant it once broke the branch. It's a small story, but it earns a genuine laugh, and suddenly you feel yourself relaxing, the tension of arrival slowly melting away. Of course, not every guest is so gracious. Across the table you catch the sharp-edged smile of a woman you remember from earlier, her stola pristine and her jewelry flashing. She lifts an olive to her lips, chews thoughtfully, and then, as if reciting lines from a play, turns to her neighbor. I always find that some people take more than their share at these gatherings, don't you? Her eyes flicker your way for just a moment, a warning, or perhaps an invitation to join her in the subtle sport of social one-upmanship. You just smile and reach for another wedge of cheese. It's a game you're not ready to play, not yet. As the appetizers disappear and the servants move in to whisk away the empty dishes, the next phase of the evening unfolds, the quiet, swirling current of gossip that runs beneath every Roman gathering. You catch snippets who's fallen out of favor with the emperor, whose marriage is on the rocks, which family's fortunes are rising or falling with the latest trade winds from Alexandria. The senators trade barbs disguised as compliments, while the poets tease the merchants for their lack of subtlety. A man who counts every coin has little left for music. There's laughter, but it's edged. Every joke is a test, and every laugh is an alliance, even if only for the moment. You notice, too, how the host and hostess move among the guests, he with a gentle hand on a shoulder here, she with a whispered word there. Each small gesture serves a purpose, smoothing over a potential quarrel, encouraging a shy guest, gently silencing someone whose story has gone on just a touch too long. It's like watching a pair of dancers, each step calculated, each movement meant to keep the evening in perfect balance. Now and then, a servant appears with a fresh pitcher of wine, pouring small measures into shallow cups. You thank her, remembering to offer a quiet gratias and a nod. Politeness matters, always, especially with those who make the feast possible. You notice which guests remember this, and which don't. You can almost predict who will be invited back and who will find themselves mysteriously left off the next guest list. There's a playful jostle as the merchant and the poet compete to see who can peel an egg in the fewest strokes, the loser forced to recite a silly verse. It's these small moments, light as feathers, that remind you that under all the grandeur, Romans are people too, competitive, mischievous, longing to be liked, dreading to be ignored. You find yourself swept up in the rhythm of it, both participant and spectator, eager for what comes next. Suddenly, you realize the host is looking in your direction, perhaps preparing to draw you into the evening's main conversation. You ready yourself with a clever remark or two, nothing too bold, just enough to show you belong, and as the next course is announced, you lean back, wine in hand, feeling the first warm flush of confidence. The triclinium is no longer a mystery. It's a stage, and tonight you're on it. As the laughter swells and the first true platters of the evening are carried in, you marvel at the elegance and intricacy of it all. It's more than dinner. It's theatre, politics, and poetry combined. with every guest both actor and audience, and as the night deepens and the lamps flicker ever brighter, you sense the evening's energy shifting, the table set for revelations, rivalries, and perhaps a touch of Roman magic yet to come. A new current of excitement washes over the table as the servants, nimble and silent, move from guest to guest with silver ewers of rosewater, bowls for rinsing, and fresh linen towels. Your hands are washed, your nerves slightly soothed, and you catch a whiff of something sweet and herbal drifting from a nearby lamp. The meal is just beginning, but already the ritual of cleanliness so essential in Rome has performed its magic, signaling that you are not merely in a house, but in a world apart, a space where the chaos of the city has no place, and every gesture is rich with meaning. The first small plates, gustese, as the Romans call it, make their rounds. Eggs, honeyed wine, salads of herbs and soft cheese, olives glistening with oil. The servants offer these delicacies on trays, presenting them not directly, but with a kind of dance, always moving from the highest-ranked guest to the lowest, circling the table in a slow, spiraling pattern. You remember, just in time to wait for the host's signal before partaking. There is an unspoken law here. Let the most honored guest begin. Only then do the others reach, gracefully, never greedily, for their As you lift an olive and feel its cool saltiness on your tongue, conversation begins to flutter again. It's low at first, like birdsong before sunrise, each guest testing the air. Someone comments on the flavor of the oil, another on the craftsmanship of the silverware. A joke floats from the merchant. This wine is so sweet, I suspect the bees are drunk, and a gentle round of laughter follows. Even as the mood warms, the rules remain. Don't interrupt, don't boast, and never speak with your mouth full. Unless, of course, you are a poet, reciting a verse about food, then all bets are off. Across the table, you spy a pair of old friends, their heads bent in close conversation, their fingers deftly slicing hard-boiled eggs and arranging them atop their bread. Their comfort with each other is obvious. They break off to share a story about last year's feast, when the senator's lapdog leapt onto the table and made off with a string of sausages. The host's eyes crinkle in amusement, and you realize some rules, if broken with enough charm, become legend rather than disgrace. A little further down the table, the atmosphere is more competitive. The poet, his wits sharp despite the gentle haze of wine, launches into a playful debate about the origin of the finest olives. He claims his family's grove near Baia produces the best. The merchant counters with tales of silver-green fruit plucked from ancient trees in Greece. The host, ever the diplomat, lifts his cup and toasts to all olives, wherever they may grow. And just like that, the tension dissolves into shared laughter. It's in moments like these that you learn the true rhythm of a Roman feast. Each guest searching for connection, for a moment of recognition, for the delicate joy of being part of something larger than themselves. The table is a place of temporary alliances and gentle rivalries. You join in when invited, offering a memory of your own, how you once mistook pickled capers for sweet grapes, to disastrous and unforgettable effect. The story lands well. You catch a conspiratorial wink from the host's cousin, and feel your shoulders loosen another notch. You notice, too, how skillfully the servants orchestrate the flow of food and conversation. They refill wine cups just as a guest's story reaches its punchline, slide new platters into empty spaces as easily as if they were playing chess, and anticipate every small need without ever drawing too much attention. You wonder what secrets they hear, what scandals they silently witness, what opinions they hold about the endless parade of guests and gossip. Perhaps you think it is they who truly know the pulse of Roman society. Midway through the gustatio, the conversation takes a clever turn. Someone proposes a game. Each guest must describe the best meal they've ever eaten in 3 sentences or less, and the winner will be chosen by the hostess. The rules spark a flurry of stories, some outlandish, some poetic, all designed to impress. One guest rhapsodizes about a banquet in Alexandria, where the fish was served on plates of gold. Another fondly recalls a country lunch, eaten on a hillside with nothing but bread, cheese, and the laughter of friends. When it's your turn, you lean in, lower your voice to a conspiratorial hush, and recount the simplest meal of your youth: a heel of bread, a splash of oil, and the sound of the rain on the roof. Because, you finish softly, sometimes hunger is the finest spice. The guests murmur their approval, and the hostess smiles, her eyes bright with something like gratitude. She declares you the winner, and a servant places a garland of violets around your neck, a gentle, fragrant crown for the evening's newest storyteller. As the first course draws to a close, you sense the table settling into its own cadence. Stories have been shared, laughter exchanged, and the careful work of weaving together a roomful of strangers has begun. Now, with a soft clap of his hands, the host signals for the next round of delights. The servants bring forth warm bread, baskets of fruit, and little bowls of salted nuts. The taste of honey lingers on your tongue, and you find yourself both satisfied and eager for more. There's a lull as everyone eats, a quiet spell broken only by the soft clatter of plates and the low hum of conversation. You use this pause to observe the room. The senator, for all his bluster, offers his wife the choicest bite from his plate. The merchant, usually so loud, listens intently as a visiting philosopher explains the difference between Epicurean and Stoic thought. You spot a young couple at the far end, their hands barely touching, their eyes meeting in the candlelight, a secret romance blooming in plain sight, hidden only by the abundance of spectacle. The host's youngest daughter, not yet old enough to join the table as a full guest, slips through the room with a kitten tucked under her arm. She offers the little creature a drop of milk from her own cup, and is rewarded with a grateful purr. The adults pretend not to notice, but the moment softens the room. Even the most hardened senator can't help but smile. You remember the advice you received upon arriving: blend in, but don't disappear. Participate, but never dominate. Tonight, you realize there's an even finer rule. Be curious. Take notice. See not just the surface, the silks and jewels and polished manners, but the real people underneath. Each guest carries their own bundle of hopes, regrets, jokes, and dreams. Each is here for their own reason, and each will leave with their own version of the night. As the last bites of bread and fruit vanish, the hostess stands, her movements quiet but commanding. She thanks the gods for the food, the company, and the peace of the evening. Everyone bows their heads, some in genuine devotion, others in polite imitation. It's another ritual, another thread woven into the tapestry of Roman life. You bow your own head, feeling a sudden rush of gratitude, not just for the food, but for the chance to see this world from the inside. If only for a night. The servants sweep in, clearing plates and crumbs, refilling cups and lighting new lamps, as the sky outside deepens from dusk to night. The air is soft and scented, the room warm with the glow of oil lamps and satisfied voices. You lean back, full but not heavy, your mind already spinning with new stories, new friendships, and the promise of even greater delights to come. It's here, in the gentle lull between courses, that you truly settle into the rhythm of the Roman feast. You're no longer just an observer, you're a guest, a participant, a storyteller. As the evening drifts forward, the boundaries between stranger and friend begin to blur. You realize with a quiet thrill that this is what the Romans do best: turn a meal into a memory, a gathering into a legend. A final wave of laughter ripples down the table as the merchant attempts a toast in Greek, mangling the pronunciation but charming everyone with his effort. The host raises his cup, invites everyone to join, and together you all drink, not just to the food or to the gods, but to the night itself, suspended between past and present, reality and story. The first notes of a new song drift through the air as a musician begins to play a slow, dreamy tune. You let yourself relax, knowing that in Rome, the feast is never really about the food, but about the people, the stories, and the gentle magic of belonging. Now comes the moment you've half dreaded, half anticipated since the invitation fluttered into your hands. The art of reclining. You'd been warned. Everyone is. Eventually. The Romans don't eat like you do, perched on a stiff chair, sitting up straight, waiting for someone to pass the salt. Here, status is measured not just by what you eat or wear, but by how you position yourself on the grand pillowed couches that surround the table, and the act itself lounging sideways, propped on your left elbow, one hand free to reach for bread or raise a goblet, carries all the meaning and comedy of a society obsessed with subtlety and display. For a brief moment, you watch the others. The most seasoned guests seem to melt into their cushions, the curve of their bodies, as graceful as cats. Some rest their chins in their hands, some fold one knee over the other, others let a bare foot peep out from the hem of their tunic, with studied nonchalance. Everyone faces the table, angled just so, but no two postures are quite alike. It's as if every Roman has developed their own little signature, The senator's slouch, the merchant's lean, the poet's full-body flop. If you're clever, you notice the subtle signals. Who holds court with a relaxed arm, who shifts and fusses, marking them as a newcomer or a guest trying a bit too hard, and who, despite their best efforts, keeps nearly sliding off the cushions altogether. Your own first attempt feels awkward, to put it kindly. You nestle yourself against the corner of the couch, left elbow pressed into a soft bolster, right arm stretched toward the table. Immediately, you realize several things. Though your elbow is going numb, but is shockingly easy to drop a grape when eating sideways. And C, the distance between your mouth and the nearest bowl of olives seems to have grown by at least a foot. You shift, subtly, but in Rome there is nothing subtle about a guest squirming on the lectus like a fish on a hot marble slab. Across the table, the senator's wife notices your discomfort. With a gentle smile, she offers quiet encouragement. You'll find your balance. It's like learning to ride a horse, except if you fall, you land on bread, and not the Appian way. A ripple of laughter follows. You appreciate the kindness. She adds, "We were all beginners once. Well, some more than others." You decide then and there that you owe her a toast before the night is over. The etiquette of reclining is a story in itself. Romans see the practice as a mark of civilization, a signal that you are free, not condemned to stand and serve, like a slave, but entitled to relax, enjoy, and display your ease. The Greeks did it first, or so the Romans claim, but here the custom has become an art, even a sport. Women traditionally remain seated or only recline at the most intimate family gatherings. Tonight, your host, ever the progressive, encourages all his guests to join in. Regardless of gender, even so, you notice a few matrons who prefer to sit upright, back straight, and hands folded, the picture of dignified restraint. Whether for modesty or simply to avoid the danger of spilling wine on their best silks, you suspect both motivations are at play. The mechanics of reclining demand a kind of coordination you never practiced at home. Your left arm must support your weight, leaving your right hand free for eating. But how do you slice a piece of cheese without accidentally elbowing your neighbor? How do you balance a cup of wine and a fig at the same time? There's a trick to it. Lean just enough to rest. Angle your knees so you don't kick anyone, and remember to shift your weight now and then to avoid cramping up. Do not, under any circumstances, try to stand up quickly. That's how you end up in the punch bowl. Or so you've heard. If you need reassurance, you're not alone. Nearly every new guest, no matter how dignified, makes at least one blunder their first time. Maybe they drop a roll into their lap, or their sandal slips off and disappears beneath the table. Some forget themselves and try to reach across the table with their left hand, frowned upon. Unless you're ambidextrous and also a senator, the real veterans take it in stride, turning every mishap into an opportunity for humor. The poet beside you, for instance, seems to make a game of how many grapes he can balance on his elbow before one goes flying. "It's a test of skill," he whispers conspiratorially, and the winner gets to tell the next story. There's a deeper meaning behind it all, too. To recline is to declare leisure, freedom, and membership in the civilized world of Roman society. Slaves serve standing. Clients, the poor or less favored, might stand at the back, ready to do a favor, but only the citizen with a seat or a couch may truly recline. Even children, unless they're of age or honored guests, are expected to remain upright, their eyes big as saucers at the grown-up's easy comfort. To be asked to recline is to be accepted, to belong. Your host, ever attentive, spots your continued efforts to perfect your pose. "It's easier after the second cup of wine," he calls out, to another ripple of laughter. You raise your cup in salute, grateful for the good humor that lubricates every Roman gathering. The laughter eases your nerves. You sink a bit more comfortably into the pillows, emboldened to join in the conversation swirling around you. Now, with most guests settled, the focus turns back to the table. The second round of dishes, Gustacio's bolder siblings, are served. Small birds glazed in honey, roasted mushrooms with herbs, bowls of olives spiked with spices from distant provinces. The scent alone is enough to make your mouth water. The poet beside you waxes poetic. What else? About the divine aroma, then ruins the moment by nearly inhaling an olive pit. You pat his back. He recovers, and someone makes a joke about the dangers of poetry and poultry, even the stern senator can't help but chuckle. Conversation turns, as it always does in Rome, to the great questions of the day. Which cook in the city can roast a peacock to perfection? Who has the best cellars in Campania? Was the philosopher Epictetus right that pleasure is overrated? Or does he simply have bad taste in fish sauce? The talk is lively, the opinions many, and you realize reclining isn't about sloth. It's about being present, engaging and responding both to the feast and to the company. As the meal progresses, you discover the small secrets that make reclining easier. Rest your elbow on the thickest part of the cushion. Use the low table to brace your wrist when reaching for a heavy plate. If you need a break, feign interest in the wall paintings for a moment, then readjust while everyone else is distracted by the next toast. And if, despite your best efforts, you find yourself sliding inexorably toward the floor, do it with a smile. After all, even the great Cicero is said to have landed in someone's lap more than once. Not all is leisure, of course. You notice that the host's glance lingers, now and then, on guests who seem too at ease, those who sprawl or slouch as if at home, letting their legs wander into others' space. The balance is delicate. Comfort, yes, but never disrespect. A Roman dinner is a theatre, and every guest is both actor and audience, improvising their part in an endless play of etiquette. As another round of wine is poured, the poet proposes a toast to the brave and the bold, and to all those who survive the trials of the Triclinium. Everyone laughs, you included, and for a moment the room is united in the sheer ridiculousness of it all. Here you are, a collection of senators, merchants, poets, matrons, and newcomers, draped across couches, eating with your hands, competing for the cleverest joke, and every one of you at some point has nearly lost your dignity to a sliding cushion. A servant appears at your elbow, offering a platter of stewed lentils and pork. You accept a modest portion, noting how others do the same. Always take just enough, never the last piece, and always offer the best morsel to your neighbor if they hesitate. This too is part of the reclining art. Generosity, patience, and a keen awareness of every subtle cue. The conversation ebbs and flows, rising to laughter, then settling into the softer tones of shared memory. Someone reminisces about a banquet years ago, where a guest famous for his wit fell asleep mid-meal, only to awaken with a peacock feather tickling his nose. Another tells a story of a dinner in the countryside, where a sudden rainstorm sent everyone scrambling for cover, food, and cushions in hand. The host shares a gentler memory of childhood feasts, simple and noisy, with bread, cheese, and stories that lasted until dawn. Through it all, you find yourself sinking deeper into the cushions. Your initial awkwardness, forgotten. Reclining, you realize, isn't about perfection. It's about surrender, allowing yourself to be carried by the flow of food, wine, laughter, and the ancient patterns of Roman hospitality. You raise your cup, now half full, to the company and to the moment, and feel for the first time that you truly belong. Of course, as the evening continues, new challenges await, balancing dessert on your lap, outwitting a neighbor determined to borrow your favorite pillow, and remembering that, yes, you still need to stand up gracefully at the end of the night, but for now, you are content. The music, the stories, the gentle buzz of voices, all blend together in a tapestry of comfort and celebration. In the quiet that falls between courses, the senator's wife leans over and murmurs, "You found your place. That's half the battle." You smile, grateful for the kindness and for the shared understanding that here in the warm heart of a Roman home, every guest, novice or veteran, can discover their own small triumphs. So you settle in, ready for whatever comes next, knowing that in this world of couches, cushions, and camaraderie, even the art of reclining can become a memory you'll cherish for years to come. Now that everyone has settled, the Triclinian's gentle murmur rises and falls with the clink of cups, the slide of plates, and the soft sizzle from the next course just beyond the curtain. And, if you look closely, you'll notice something fascinating. Every guest, no matter their status, keeps at least one eye fixed on the host. After all, at a Roman feast, the host isn't simply a provider, he's a ringmaster, a puppeteer, a master of ceremonies whose mood and skill can make the night shimmer or shatter. Your host tonight plays his part with perfect poise. from the tilt of his head to the generous but never overflowing pour of wine. He orchestrates the scene with 1,000 subtle cues. You study him, trying to decipher the secret language of hospitality in a culture where every dinner is an opportunity, and every opportunity is a test. The host's first act is the blessing. He raises a small cup to the household gods at the lararium, murmuring a prayer just loud enough for the nearest guests to catch. The rest, watching carefully, echo his gesture with a soft chorus of Benay or Salah, good wishes for health, fortune, and a night without disaster. You do the same, perhaps a beat behind, but in Rome it's the spirit that counts. Unless you spill something, then it's the stain that everyone remembers. As soon as the blessing is complete, the real show begins. Platters arrive, roasted game birds, steaming vegetables, sprinkled with cumin and mint, honey-glazed dates, and savory cakes. The host accepts the first sample, offers it to the guest of honor, and only then does everyone else follow. Here, generosity is both genuine and a strategic performance. Never eat before your guests, Roman wisdom goes, but also never let a guest forget whose table they grace. The host's words, stories, and gestures now set the rhythm. He chooses conversation topics as a conductor chooses music, sometimes bold, sometimes soft, always designed to bring every guest into harmony. When someone new arrives, he calls them by name and welcomes them, sometimes even making a small, self-deprecating joke about his own cooking or his last ill-fated dinner. Remember that time my cook confused honey for vinegar? My friends still call it the sweet and sour symposium. Watch closely, and you'll see his motives run deeper. The host steers conversations with quiet genius. If a senator's story begins to veer into politics too heated for the moment, the host redirects with a well-timed anecdote about gladiator games or an outrageous merchant's tale from the provinces. When the poet threatens to plunge the room into melancholic verse, the host nudges things back to lighter topics with a riddle or a sly remark about the last Saturnalia. It's as if he's always 2 moves ahead, shepherding the mood with gentle but unmistakable authority. And yet, there's more. The host is a watcher, too. He notes who compliments the cook, who offers their neighbor the last olive, who fills the silence with wit or warmth, and who lets their attention wander, or worse, sulks at the end of the couch. You realize after your third careful toast that this is part of the night's deeper current, a silent tally, a reckoning that will shape the next round of invitations, alliances, and whispered stories. In Rome, hospitality is power. Servants, too, play their role in the host's theatre. You notice how they never let a cup go empty near the guest of honor, how they anticipate the senator's request for more pepper, how they appear just as the merchant is running out of bread. It's not luck, it's the host's careful training, a demonstration of control and care, but also a gentle reminder of his ability to command even the smallest details. Amid the feast, the host shares a story about his youth, a tale of nearly burning down his mother's villa during a festival gone awry. He describes the panic, the chaos, and of course the rescue of his father's prize parrot before a single tapestry could be saved. Laughter ripples around the room, not just at the story but at the easy way the host folds humility and humor together. You realize this is more than charm. It's a kind of social currency, earned through years of hosting, giving, and never quite letting anyone forget whose roof they sit beneath. But there are more subtle games afoot. You watch as the host, always generous, allows the guest of honor to sample the choicest morsel, then makes a point to offer the next best portion to a guest who arrived late. An olive branch, perhaps, or a clever play for gratitude. When a young guest, nervous and new, nearly tips his cup, the host catches it with a quick hand and an easy, forgiving laugh. Happens to the best of us, he declares. The young man's blush fades as the room moves on. Disaster averted, dignity mostly intact. You begin to understand that for the host, every guest is a reflection of his household. If someone is bored, he has failed. If someone quarrels, he is to blame. The greatest Roman hosts are remembered not for their food or their wine, but for the atmosphere they conjure, a sense of belonging, ease, and above all, pleasure. Now comes the test of inclusion. The host makes the rounds, pausing at each couch with a word or two, sometimes inquiring about a guest's recent travels, sometimes teasing a friend for an old mistake. With each exchange, he draws everyone in, ensuring no one is left alone with their thoughts for too long. If he senses a lull, he signals for music, or calls on the poet for a verse, or challenges the group to guess the next dish. In this way, the host's performance is never still. never passive. Like a juggler, he keeps every ball in the air, hoping none will fall. Yet, every host, however skilled, faces challenges. Tonight, a senator's sharp remark about trade tariffs nearly sparks an argument with the merchant. The air grows tense, the room's light suddenly feels harsh. Before the mood can sour, the host interjects with a joke about Roman taxes. I pay mine, eventually. The gods are patient, my accountant is not, and the tension diffuses into chuckles. You watch, impressed a single quip, and the balance is restored. You start to see patterns, the host's favourites, those who always get the first toast, the best seat, the longest stories, and the obligate guests invited for politics or family, their comfort less important than their presence. You realise, too, that even being the obligate is a kind of honour, if a slightly perilous one. As you recline, sampling spiced sausage and grapes, you marvel at how every bite and every word seem to spiral back to the host. In Rome, gratitude is public, but resentment is often silent, and both are remembered for years. At one point, a servant presents a rare delicacy, dormice, roasted and sprinkled with honeyed poppy seeds. You watch the host. Does he dive in with gusto, or does he wait for the braver guests to take the first nibble? He does neither. Instead, he makes a playful show of daring the merchant to try one first. The merchant, eager to please, accepts, and a round of applause follows as he declares the taste surprisingly pleasant, like a nut with ambitions. The host has managed, with a single gesture, to turn a culinary risk into a communal moment. As the meal flows on, the host's role as arbiter of etiquette is constantly on display. When a guest uses the wrong hand for a serving spoon, the host graciously swaps his own, making it seem a matter of personal preference rather than a mistake. When a matron drops her napkin, the host signals a servant to retrieve it without comment or fuss. Every small rescue is another stitch in the fabric of his carefully crafted hospitality. You also notice how the host manages the flow of wine. He encourages restraint early on, hinting at stronger drink to come, but never lets the conversation turn too raucous. Too soon, when a young guest shows signs of overindulgence, the host steers the topic to something sobering, a tale of philosophy or a debate over Roman history. It's an act of subtle discipline, one that preserves both dignity and enjoyment. The longer you watch, the more you understand. To host in Rome is to perform, to persuade, and, most of all, to protect. The host is both shield and spotlight, making certain that every guest feels important, but none overshadow the rest. You find yourself admiring him, not just for his wealth or taste, but for his rare ability to turn a gathering of competitive, opinionated Romans into a harmonious whole, if only for a night. The final act of the host performance arrives with dessert. Sweet honey cakes, candied nuts, pears poached in wine. The host proposes a toast, thanking the gods, his family, and his guests for their company. It's formal, but not stiff, heartfelt without being maudlin. You raise your own cup, echoing the sentiment, and feel a genuine sense of gratitude, not only for the feast, but for the artful way you've been welcomed, guided, and yes, entertained. As conversation meanders into softer, more intimate territory, stories of childhood, whispered jokes, dreams for the future, you realize the true power of a Roman host. It isn't just about food or showmanship. It's about making every guest believe, for an evening, that they truly belong, and that the world, at least around this table, is in perfect balance. You catch the host's eye and offer a small nod of thanks, which he returns with a knowing smile. For a moment you share a quiet understanding, the kind that lingers long after the lamps are extinguished, and the night has claimed its last toast. If you've made it this far into the feast, you can congratulate yourself. You've survived the host's scrutiny, the labyrinth of status and seating, and maybe even learned to recline without knocking anything over. But your education is far from complete. Now comes a new kind of test, as the real heart of the Roman banquet is revealed on the table itself, dish after astonishing dish, each more elaborate, surprising, or alarming than the last. The ancient Romans, as you'll quickly discover, ate with imagination, and sometimes with a sense of humour that bordered on the sadistic. The first thing you notice is the variety. Roman cuisine is a glorious collision of local bounty and foreign fantasy. On one hand, platters of roasted meats, goose, duck, and sometimes something more exotic, like peacock or flamingo, appear, their skin lacquered to a perfect, glistening crisp. You stare, half in awe and half in disbelief, as a servant sets down a dish you suspect once flew farther than most senators ever have. You're relieved you weren't seated by the parrot statue in the atrium. The stare of painted eyes would only increase your guilt. Next come the fish-gilt head bream. Mullet, maybe a tiny whole mackerel, laid out with wild herbs and gleaming sauce. If you're lucky, you'll spot a bowl of oysters, plump and glistening, swimming in a sauce both tart and peppery. There is, of course, the ever-present garum, a pungent fish sauce so essential to Roman taste that it finds its way onto nearly everything. You're offered a drizzle, and you accept it as bravely as you can, unsure if you're about to experience a culinary revelation or the world's most memorable mistake. But the true drama of Roman dining is found in the delicacies, the foods that provoke conversation, admiration, and sometimes outright horror. A platter of dormice appears, roasted whole and dusted with honey and poppy seeds. These plump little morsels, served in small, decorative pots, are the oysters of the land, beloved by some, avoided by others. The host watches to see who is adventurous enough to try one. You steel yourself, select the smallest, and take a careful bite. The result is surprisingly delicious. The skin crisp, the meat tender and nutty. The poet beside you, not to be outdone, swallows two at once and announces that he feels as daring as Hercules. The room bursts into laughter, and for a moment even the most skeptical guests relax. Then there are the vegetable courses. Artichokes stewed in wine, asparagus glazed with oil, onions roasted until sweet. Roman cooks love to surprise the palate with combinations of sweet and sour, prunes with pork, apples with lentils, honey on nearly everything. You notice a bowl of stewed carrots glistening with syrup and sprinkled with cumin. You try it, your taste buds waking up to a strange harmony: spice, sugar, and the earthy warmth of roots pulled from the Italian soil. The bread, too, is worthy of notice. Round loaves dusted with flour, crusty and golden, passed from hand to hand and broken rather than sliced. This simple act, breaking bread, carries more meaning than you might expect. In Roman tradition, to share bread is to signal peace and welcome. You watch as a guest quietly offers a chunk to his neighbor, a silent apology for a long-forgotten slight. The neighbor accepts, the gesture unspoken but unmistakable. In a world so focused on status, these moments of humility are the quiet heartbeats of every gathering. Wine flows freely, sometimes too freely. The best hosts water the wine, for only a barbarian or someone looking for an early exit drinks it neat. The conversation grows looser, the jokes a bit bolder. Someone brings up the infamous banquet, where the wine was so strong that a guest tried to propose to a statue. Another laughs about a cousin who once mistook the host's prize goldfish for a side dish. The host, always quick on his feet, claims he still suspects the cat. But Roman food is as much about what isn't eaten as what is. Superstition, health, and fashion shape every course. Some guests avoid beans, fearing they cloud the mind or encourage bad dreams. Others pass on certain meats, goat, perhaps, or hare, citing omens or advice from a family doctor. Garlic is suspect for anyone hoping to find romance before the next full moon, while onions curiously are said to inspire courage and perhaps the next round of loud, fearless toasts. All of this is watched over by the ever-present, ever-patient servants. They move with a precision that verges on magical, always one step ahead of every need. One glides in with a fresh loaf just as the last is devoured. Another offers a damp cloth before anyone even notices the honey dripping down their fingers. There is a skill to this ballet, and you suspect the true backbone of every great Roman feast is not the host, not the cook, but these silent, tireless hands. Your attention is drawn, inevitably, to the centerpiece of the table, a colossal platter carrying what looks like an entire wild boar, its mouth stuffed with fruit, its hide lacquered and shining. The senator rises, and with a bit too much theatricality, carves the first slice, offering it to the host's youngest son. The child, already spoiled by the parade of delicacies, accepts with the air of a future consul, who knows the best is always reserved for him. Somewhere near the middle of the table, you hear the merchant trying to guess what's inside the next covered dish. If it's peacock tongues, I win 5 denarii. If it's lark's tongues, you owe me 10. The poet, never one to pass up a chance for a dramatic flourish, suggests that it might be the tongue of Mercury himself. When the lid is lifted and a cloud of steam escapes, everyone leans in, eyes wide. It's neither just a beautifully seasoned stew of lentils and wild mushrooms, greeted with relief by those who secretly hoped for something less ambitious. And yet, there is always one dish designed to shock. Tonight, it's a platter of sea urchins, cracked open and glistening, the contents sprinkled with herbs and vinegar. A few brave souls dig in, the rest watching as if a gladiator contest is about to begin. You accept a spoonful, determined not to seem timid, and find the taste sharp and briny, a strange but not unpleasant echo of the sea. The senator's wife takes a single bite, and then, with perfect poise, declares that one is enough to remind me of my youth on the coast, and two would remind me why I left. Desserts, when they arrive, are a final act of sensory theatre. There are honey cakes, little balls of deep-fried dough soaked in syrup, candied fruits from distant provinces, and piles of nuts dusted with spices. Children sneak extra bites when their mothers aren't looking. Older guests reminisce about the sweets of their childhood. A bowl of fresh figs, split open to reveal ruby hearts, is passed around with reverence. You take one, savouring its luscious sweetness, and think of summer's warmth stored in a single bite. Through all of this, conversation never stops. The host asks each guest about their favourite dish, teasing those who pass on the more unusual offerings. "You don't like dormouse?" he jokes to a stoic merchant. "But it's the food of the gods." The merchant grins and claims he's saving room for dessert. The matron at your side confides that she always eats the honeyed locusts first, because if you wait, someone else will get them. It's a small but important rule. Fortune favours the bold, or at least the quick-fingered. But not everything on the table is safe. Roman hosts, ever mindful of fashion, sometimes serve fad foods that go out of style as quickly as they arrive. One year, jelly made from calves' feet is the rage. The next, it's considered hopelessly vulgar. A particularly ambitious host once dyed every course green with imported spinach, hoping to impress a health-obsessed friend, only to find half the guests quietly hiding the evidence under their napkins. And then there are the feasts that end in chaos. The night someone brought a cheese so ripe it emptied the room, or the banquet where a surprise pie contained not apples but live thrushes that burst out and flew through the triclinium. The best Roman dinners always walk the line between the sublime and the ridiculous. You find yourself hoping tonight leans more toward the former. As the plates are cleared and the wine flows, a quiet contentment settles over the room. Guests lean back on their cushions, licking honey from their fingers, sharing the comfort of full bellies and warm company. Some take this moment to slip outside for fresh air, others to sneak a conversation in the shadows, perhaps even to plot a new alliance or spread a delicious rumor. The children, finally freed from formalities, chase each other in the garden, their laughter drifting back into the candlelight. You realize, looking around, that you have tasted things you never imagined, survived every culinary dare, and perhaps even discovered a new favorite. More importantly, you have learned the silent language of the Roman table, to taste boldly, to eat with curiosity, and above all to enjoy the spectacle, whether it's a honey-drenched fig or a daring friend balancing a peacock feather on his nose. As the evening deepens and the shadows lengthen, you feel the first true relaxation in your body since you crossed the threshold. The table glows with the memory of everything that has passed, and you realize a Roman banquet is never just about food. It's about testing limits, sharing surprises, and finding joy in the company of others. If you remember nothing else, remember this. At a Roman feast, fortune truly does favor the bold. If you think the biggest dangers of a Roman banquet are exotic dishes and reclining mishaps, think again. Tonight's most treacherous obstacle course is the labyrinth of table manners, a game of skill, timing, and luck, where one wrong move can echo in gossip long after the last honey cake is gone. Around you, as platters are cleared and new ones arrive, every guest becomes both participant and spectator in this quiet, relentless contest. Manners, you quickly realize, are not merely social niceties, they're survival tactics, the ancient Roman way of separating the sophisticated from the scandalous. You steady yourself, watching the veterans for cues. The napkin mapper is your first test. Some guests tuck it casually over the left shoulder, others drape it across their lap, or even keep it ready in hand, using it with the finesse of a magician. You opt for the lap. It seems safest, but not before checking to ensure it's free of stains. Wiping your mouth with a used napkin is a mistake you only make once, and the memory will haunt you through several saturnalias. Then comes the first real challenge, eating with your hands. Forget forks here. Food is finger fare, and the etiquette is as nuanced as the feast itself. You watch as a senator deftly pinches a morsel between thumb and two fingers, lifts it neatly to his mouth, and never once lets sauce escape to stain his toga. You, meanwhile, manage well enough with bread, but the minute a slippery olive threatens to roll away, you find yourself squeezing it a bit too hard. A burst of juice lands on your napkin. Thank Jupiter it wasn't the senator's sleeve, and you make a mental note. Next time, approach olives with the caution of a gladiator facing a lion. No matter how skilled you are, a Roman dinner is full of tiny disasters. Someone drops a fig on the floor, another sneezes mid-bite and sends crumbs flying. A third laughs too hard and nearly snorts wine up his nose. Each mishap is met with a quick recovery. Never dwell, never apologize too much. Just a self-deprecating grin and a napkin at the ready. The best hosts, you notice, are quick to offer gentle distractions when embarrassment threatens. A sudden toast, a compliment on the cook's latest creation, or even a well-timed joke about the gods frowning on overeager appetites. Some guests, of course, seem immune to shame. The poet, with his threadbare robe and fearless grin, licks honey from his fingers, winks at his neighbour, and launches into a wild story about the time he dined at the palace and dropped an entire chicken into a senator's lap. He never invited me back, the poet concludes with a shrug, but his wife still sends me figs. Laughter follows, and you realize, sometimes survival at the table is about turning blunders into legend. Still, certain faux pas simply cannot be recovered. Double dipping? Never. Reaching across another guest for a choice bite? Rude, unless you're rescuing a plate from imminent disaster. And most important of all, don't take the last morsel without offering it first. That final honey cake is a social minefield. Touch it too soon and you're greedy. Refuse it too pointedly and you're ungrateful. The best move? Offer dime, accept with a smile, only if truly urged. Drinking too follows rules older than the city's walls. Romans water their wine. Strong drink is for barbarians and fools. Each cup is raised with a toast, and if you're clever, you invent new ones as the evening goes on. To old friends and new jokes, to cooks braver than generals, to the next feast and the next. The trick is to drink neither too fast nor too slow. The merchant on your left drains his cup after every joke, and by the fourth toast he's noticeably louder and far more affectionate, declaring you his dearest friend, and promising to name his next ship after your pet dog. Meanwhile, a heated debate erupts at the other end of the table. Should one eat the crust of the bread, or not? The senator's wife insists the gods favour those who finish every crumb, while the hostess confides that the true connoisseur leaves the crusts for the kitchen slaves. As a sign of respect, the argument grows so passionate that the host must intervene, promising to consult the household gods and report back at the next dinner. You notice how the best guests handle their food. Small bites, little pauses, a careful wipe of the fingers before reaching for another delicacy, a clever touch. Some keep a separate tasting napkin for particularly sticky morsels. The most impressive of all is the senator, who, with a practiced flick, folds his napkin into a tiny pouch to hold olive pits and fish bones. If dinner ever becomes a competition for tidiness, you suspect he would win the laurel wreath. Conversation, of course, is an etiquette game in itself. The hostess steers clear of politics. We're here to feast, not fight. While the poet tries to slip philosophy into every joke, you learn to nod at the right moments, listen more than you speak, and save your sharpest jokes for the right audience. A matron tells a story about the emperor's last birthday. The merchant counters with news of the latest shipwreck off Sicily. A visiting scholar quotes Greek proverbs with such earnestness that even the children roll their eyes. With each new course, the servants swap out plates and bowls, wiping the table clean with cloth scented faintly of rosemary. Every action is a signal. A cleared dish means ready for more. An empty cup is a plea for wine. A dropped utensil is a quiet disaster. You are careful, but not so careful as to seem anxious. A good guest is neither invisible nor overwhelming. Blend in, stand out, always in just the right measure. Of course, there are the small inevitable indignities: crumbs in your lap, wine on your sleeve, a grape that bounces off your plate and vanishes under the next couch. When this happens, and it always does, you simply smile, make a joke about feeding the household spirits and move on. To show too much mortification is almost as bad as making a scene. A sense of humour is your best shield. Worse still are the noises. A burp, well, if discreet, may pass, especially after a hearty toast, but don't make a habit of it. Sneezes, however, are dangerous territory. The polite guest turns away, dabs discreetly, and apologises with a little wave. There's even an old Roman joke: if you must sneeze, do it at the same time as the host's loudest laugh. As for hiccups, the poet claims to know a charm involving a single drop of honey, a whispered wish, and the left sandal of a senator, but you suspect he's making it up as he goes along. Then there are the accidents that simply defy preparation. Someone's cup tips over, spilling watered wine onto the embroidered cushion. A child's runaway meatball finds a home in a guest's sandal. A servant, hurrying with a platter of pears, slips and nearly scatters fruit into the lap of the host. In each case, the rule is the same: recover quickly, help if you can, and never ever blame the servants. Blaming a servant marks you as small-minded, and Rome's great houses do not reward the petty. Amid these dramas, you witness moments of grace. The merchant, realizing he's monopolized the olive bowl, offers it around the couch. The hostess gently dabs a crumb from her husband's chin. The senator's wife, noticing a young guest's anxiety, folds his napkin for him and winks. Don't let the bread win. Such gestures remind you that etiquette is not about rigidity, but about kindness, a way to keep everyone at ease, even in a world built on competition. Toward the end of the meal, the greatest danger emerges: the accidental faux pas that can haunt you for years. Take the story of the Great Spoon Catastrophe. As told by the poet, a promising young lawyer, hoping to impress, picked up the wrong spoon and dropped it into the host's prized sauce boat. The result, a tidal wave of fish sauce across half the table, and a nickname, Sponicus, that followed him for decades. The lesson is clear: know your utensils, but also know how to laugh at yourself. You learn, too, that generosity is always in fashion. If you see a neighbour's plate empty, offer a bite of your favourite dish. If someone looks lost, help them to the best wine or the softest bread. These small gestures matter in a world where fortunes change with the turning of a phrase. Kindness at the table is a coin always accepted. With the last course finished, the guests lean back, wine in hand, exchanging glances that say, "We have survived." The host rises for a final toast. You join in, raising your cup and thinking how, for all its perils, there's no place you'd rather be. Roman table manners are demanding, yes, but also full of laughter, forgiveness, and the comforting knowledge that every guest at some point has worn a crumb, dropped a grape, and laughed along with the rest. As you recline on your cushion, napkin a little less white than it was at the start, you understand what the Romans have always known. Etiquette isn't about perfection, it's about connection, humility, and sharing both your best and your blunders. It's about making room at the table, in more ways than one. So, the next time you find yourself fumbling with an olive or facing down a runaway fig, remember, in the end, every mistake is just another story, waiting for the next great feast. The table is clearing, but the night is just limbering up, because in Rome, a meal without wine is like a senator without opinions. Technically possible, but frankly unthinkable. If you hoped the etiquette gauntlet ended with the last honeyed fig, you're in for a surprise. Now begins the second half of every memorable Roman banquet: the games, the laughter, and the curious dangers of drinking in company. Here, the rules are older than the forum stones and slipperier than a plate of garum-drenched eels. First, there's the ritual of the wine itself. Roman hosts pride themselves on variety and cleverness, mixing wines from all corners of the empire. Sicilian for depth, Falernian for prestige, Spanish or Gaulish for novelty, and always plenty of the local Campanian vintage. The wines are poured from clay amphorae, often chilled in basins of snow, brought in at vast expense from the distant Apennines. It's a little boast, a way to impress: see what far-flung wonders I bring to my table. Behold my power, one goblet at a time. But the Romans don't simply pour and gulp. Every stage of wine service is an act, beginning with the host mixing the wine with water in just the right proportions. Too strong and the evening devolves into farce and embarrassment. Too weak and guests begin to wonder if their host is stingy. You watch as the host, with the gravitas of a high priest, consults with his steward, swirls the mixture, and finally raises the first cup for the gods and for Fortuna, goddess of luck, always welcome at a party with this many personalities. Only then does the wine circle the couches. Each guest raises a toast, and here's where things get truly interesting. The Romans take their toast seriously, sometimes so seriously that a whole round can last longer than the main course. The host starts with a formal dedication to the health of all gathered. After that, the rules loosen, and guests are invited or challenged to invent ever more outlandish, clever, or heartfelt dedications. You're surprised how quickly the mood shifts. One moment you're sipping politely, the next you're laughing at a raucous blessing for the noble goddess who keeps socks paired in the wash. Yes, even in Rome, laundry woes haunt the civilized world. It isn't long before the drinking games begin. The most famous and notorious is commissatio, a raucous tradition that makes modern party games look tame. Each guest is assigned a master of ceremonies, a rex bebendi or king of drinking, whose job it is to invent challenges, dole out punishments, and generally keep the wine and the mischief flowing. Tonight, the poet has been chosen, and he dons a garland of laurel leaves with the solemnity of a man accepting a command from Jupiter himself. First rule, he announces, his voice carrying down the table. No one may drink with their right hand until the first joke is told. Confusion, giggles, and a few sly cheats follow. The merchant gets caught and must recite a tongue twister about sneezing senators and snoring slaves. The senator tries to argue the rules. What about left-handed toasts? But is overruled to general applause. Wine games, of course, can be as creative as the company. You play Navia, where guests flick little nutshells across the table, betting on whose will travel the farthest. The loser must compose a poem on the spot, or sing a line from a Greek ballad. Another game involves guessing the source of a mystery wine. Your neighbor claims he can distinguish Spanish from Gaulish with a single sniff. But after the third cup, even the most refined palate is in trouble. A clever guest brings out a set of carved dice, and soon there are bets on everything from who can catch an olive in their mouth, to who will be the first to fall asleep. But it's not all chaos and dares. Some of the most treasured moments come from the quieter rituals, the old-fashioned, thoughtful rounds of benevolentia, when each guest is invited to praise another at the table. At first it's just compliments. To the senator, whose taste in sandals is only rivaled by his taste in poetry. But as the wine loosens tongues, it becomes confessions of admiration and affection. Some genuine, some slyly teasing, all building a web of goodwill that holds the table together through the night. Of course, there are perils. You quickly learn the golden rule of Roman feasting. Pace yourself. The guest who downs every toast is remembered not for their spirit, but for the way they sing to the furniture by the end of the evening. The host, skilled as always, signals for lighter wine as the laughter grows louder. Drink to enjoy, not to forget, he quips, earning a round of applause and a quiet sigh of relief from the servant refilling your cup. Conversation 2 takes on new life as the wine flows. The topics grow bolder. Who will be the next consul? Which poet truly deserved last year's literary prize? The best way to roast a dormouse without losing the stuffing? Someone starts an argument about the origins of the best garum. Someone else inevitably declares their undying love for a person, a city, or a favorite goat. Through it all, jokes fly faster than arrows in a legionary skirmish, and you find yourself laughing more easily, even as you try to keep your wits about you. At the center of it all is the host, still steering with a deft hand. He encourages the timid, tempers the rowdy, and keeps the mood buoyant. When the senator's wife offers a toast to strong women and stronger wine, he echoes it with a grand flourish. When the merchant tries to start a debate about taxes, he redirects with a clever riddle. If two guests talk over each other, he raises his cup and insists they settle their dispute with a contest of who can balance a date on their nose the longest. It's all in good fun, but the undercurrent is real. Even at play, Romans observe the boundaries of wit and respect. Sometimes, the games get more philosophical. Tonight, someone starts the tradition of symposium questions. If you could dine with any god, who would it be? Answers range from the wise, Minerva for her stories, to the mischievous, Bacchus for obvious reasons, to the practical, Vesta because at least the food would never be cold. You're called on, and after a moment you reply, Mercury, because I'd like the gossip to travel fast. The poet salutes you and the laughter circles the couches once again. Still, for every guest who shines, another is caught off guard. The visiting cousin, nervous and shy, spills a bit of wine, his cheeks flushing red. The host immediately draws attention to himself, faking a dramatic sneeze and sending half his own drink onto the floor. The room bursts into laughter, and just like that, the embarrassment dissolves into warmth. You realize, as the host gives the cousin a friendly clap on the back, that here, saving face is an art, and a truly generous host knows just when to play the fool. Some guests flirt and banter, spinning tales of heroic exploits and epic blunders. Others recite bits of poetry, sometimes impressive, sometimes deliberately terrible. You even catch a servant, emboldened by the crowd, humming along to a love song. The matron at your side asks you to join in the next round, and you accept, raising your cup to late nights and good stories. The merchant immediately tries to one-up you with full purses and empty jugs, which everyone agrees is a very merchant thing to say. There are moments of sheer chaos. A sudden impromptu dance contest among the children, a daring guest attempting to recite Virgil backwards, the senator trying and failing to juggle 3 figs. There are moments of quiet. 2. The host's daughter sharing a memory of her grandfather's farm, the merchant describing a lucky storm that saved his ship, the poet humming the start of a lullaby his mother sang to him as a child. As the night lengthens and the games give way to more reflective talk, the table becomes a tapestry of soft voices, warm laughter, and the occasional snore from a guest who has, inevitably, lost the battle against drowsy comfort. The lamps are trimmed, the air smells of wax and crushed grape, and you realize, as you look around, that you are no longer simply a guest. You're part of the story. The memory of this night will linger, a gentle warmth to be savoured in quieter hours. One last toast is called to the sun that will rise on our stories, and the moon that kept our secrets. Cups are raised, wine splashes, and the room glows with the golden flickering magic of shared celebration. It's said in Rome that the true measure of a feast isn't how much you eat, but how well you laugh. And, as you recline on your couch, your head pleasantly spinning and your heart full, you think there's wisdom in that. The rules of drinking may be many, but the joy is simple: connection, kindness, and a place at the table, wherever you are. As the laughter fades and the last drops are drained, you realize the games have done their work. Differences have softened, strangers have become friends, and even the sternest senator has learned to balance a grape on his nose. Tomorrow, you might remember the food, the wine, or even the missteps, but most of all, you'll remember the way the room felt, alive, inviting and forever humming with the sweet, unpredictable music of Roman hospitality. The lamps burn lower, and the air in the triclinium grows sweet and hazy, edged with the laughter and warmth only a long night, and good company can conjure. Plates are pushed aside, the last drops of wine are savoured, and you realize with a tiny secret thrill that you have survived, no, thrived, through the most treacherous passages of a Roman feast. You've nimbly dodged social gaffes, raised your cup in time with the best, and even managed not to snort wine out your nose at the poet's jokes, a feat worth celebrating in itself. Yet the night isn't over. In fact, you sense it's gliding toward its most intimate magical hours, the slow golden coda of the banquet, when masks slip, hearts open, and the soul of Roman hospitality is revealed. It is in these lingering hours, after the major courses and formal toasts, that the Romans show their truest colours, not through the choreography of etiquette, but through the quieter rituals that bind friends, family, and even strangers into a single glowing circle. This is the time of sermo, the deep conversation, the long winding stories and whispered confidences that might not surface in the bright competitive rush of the early evening. The clamour has softened, the shadows have stretched across the mosaic floor, and suddenly the great room feels less like a theatre and more like a home. It begins, as always, with a gentle invitation. The host, having played his public role with grace, now reclines more comfortably, his words softer, his attention turning to those nearest. He asks about childhood, about games played in dusty courtyards, favourite pets, first friends lost to time. The senator, always so dignified, admits to sneaking pastries from the kitchens as a boy. The merchant confides how he used to dream of sailing as far as the edge of the world, only to discover, with a laugh, that the world is full of edges, and not all of them are at sea. Laughter follows, but it's warmer now. Close, you find yourself drawn in, sharing your own memory, perhaps of a mother's lullaby, a market day long ago, the first time you saw the city lights from a hill outside the walls. There's a comfort in speaking here in the hush after feast and revelry, knowing the only measure is honesty. One guest sings a line of an old song. Another, emboldened by the hour, tells a story about a lucky escape from a stampeding ox. The poet, for once, simply listens, head nodding to the gentle rhythm of voices. It's in these exchanges that you see the Romans most clearly, not as conquerors or competitors, but as people who treasure the same small things as you: warmth, company, remembrance, and a soft place to fall at the end of the day. Even the senator's wife, who ruled the table with sly wit, now leans against her husband's shoulder, her hair loosened, her laugh ringing with something like nostalgia. The candles flicker, and the shadows dance. Someone proposes a game of what if, a favourite among the imaginative and the bold. What if you could change one day in your life? Asks the merchant. What if you could speak to a god for just 5 minutes? Wonders the senator's son. Each guest takes a turn, answering not with the bluster of early evening, but with gentle honesty. You're struck by how similar the answers are. No matter the question, most would ask for another moment with a lost friend, a chance to say "I'm sorry," or "I love you," or simply to relive a day when the world felt soft and endless. This late-night vulnerability is part of the genius of the Roman feast. For all their pride and rivalry, the Romans knew the value of these after-hours connections. It's in these moments, long after the last platter is cleared, that true alliances are forged, grievances softened, and wounds healed by a joke, a story, or a shared sigh over the fleetingness of good company. Outside, the city has quieted. The distant clatter of hooves, the last shout from a tavern, the lull of fountains. Rome itself seems to be exhaling, the weight of day dissolving into the velvet dark. A soft breeze moves through the open windows, carrying the faint scent of pine and damp earth. Someone, perhaps the host's youngest daughter, lights a new lamp, its flame sending long golden fingers across the faces of the guests. In this light, everyone looks gentler, more vulnerable. You catch the merchant dabbing a tear from his eye at a particularly moving story. The senator's son, usually so brash, sits quietly, eyes on his hands. The host, sensing the magic of the moment, asks each guest to share a wish for the future. Some are grand hopes for peace, for Rome's continued glory, for voyages to distant shores. Others are heartbreakingly simple. "I wish my mother could see my new house," says one matron. "I wish my daughter could laugh again," murmurs another. When it's your turn, you speak from the heart, surprising even yourself with the simplicity and sincerity of your wish. It's not all seriousness. Laughter returns, bright as ever, when someone proposes another round of verses, this time with a twist. Each must begin with a word chosen by the person to their left. You're handed moonlight, and before you know it, you're spinning a little tale about a cat who outsmarts a fox in the shadows of the Palatine. The table erupts in applause, and the merchant tries to follow with grape, only to end up in a fit of giggles. Even the poet, worn out from earlier games, manages a few clever lines about love lost and found in a bowl of olives. Food reappears, as if summoned by memory: bowls of fresh fruit, small honey cakes, and nuts roasted with salt. These, the shadow courses, are the final comfort, meant to stave off the morning's hunger and send every guest home with a taste of sweetness. A servant passes around cups of spiced wine, the fragrance filling the air with notes of cinnamon, pepper, and bay leaf. You sip, savouring the warmth that curls through you, mingling with the warmth of laughter and gentle voices. If the earlier phases of the banquet were about performance, displays of wit, fashion, appetite, and ambition, these final hours are about intimacy, about the gentle hum of acceptance that fills the room. You realize that this, more than any dish or toast, is the true heart of Roman table etiquette. Knowing how to let your guard down, how to listen, how to be kind. The most important lesson isn't how to recline, which sauce to choose, or even how to avoid making a spectacle of yourself. It's simply this. Every meal is an invitation to community. Every guest a story waiting to be welcomed. As the lamps flicker lower, the first hints of fatigue settle over the group. The poet has fallen asleep, mouth open, garland slipping down over one eye. The senator stifles a yawn, his wife now curled quietly against his side. A servant moves softly through the room, collecting empty cups, tucking stray pillows back into place, and dimming the lights one by one. The city outside is a dark hush, punctuated only by the occasional bark of a distant dog. You stretch, arching your back and feeling every bone, every muscle softened by food, wine, and laughter. For a moment you're struck by how timeless this feels. The rituals might change, the fashion might shift, but people everywhere will always gather, feast, tell stories, and find comfort in the closeness of others. Tonight, you have become part of a tradition older than stone, a story that will carry your laughter, your wish, your new friendships into tomorrow and beyond. The host rises for a final, gentle toast, no longer the showman, but just another soul in the soft light, grateful for company and for the shared warmth of a long night. To home, to hope, and to mornings worth waking up for, he says quietly. Every guest repeats the words, and for a moment it feels as if the whole city is listening. You rise too, stretching cramped legs, collecting your things, and exchanging sleepy goodbyes. There are promises to meet again, invitations offered and accepted, the subtle sense that tonight has tied invisible threads between you and every other soul at the table. You step into the quiet Roman night, the cool air brushing your cheeks, the lamps flickering far above. As you make your way home, the taste of honey, you'd think, as you stumble gently into the Roman night, that the story of dinner would end at the threshold. But of course you'd be wrong. For the Romans, what happens after the meal is nearly as important as all that came before. The domus, that grand stage of laughter and wit, doesn't simply fall silent. Instead it hums with after-dinner rituals and unspoken codes, a winding down that's both graceful and deeply human, full of small kindnesses, last chances, and a little mischief. First, there's the ritual of parting. Never rushed, never abrupt. Goodbyes are as choreographed as greetings. Guests rise in gentle stages, easing stiff limbs, stretching shoulders tired from hours of reclining. The host, always observant, moves quietly among his friends, offering a last cup of spiced wine to some, a gentle word to others, and a steadying arm to anyone who's had a bit too much Falernian. It's a different sort of hosting now, less about performance, more about genuine care. You find yourself part of a slow, shuffling river of guests moving from the triclinium back to the atrium. Sandals found and cloaks retrieved. Some guests linger near the household gods to whisper a final prayer, an offering of thanks, or perhaps a wish for safe passage through the night's unpredictable streets. You do the same, feeling the cool stone of the altar and the brief comfort of tradition. Others, bolder or simply more restless, slip out into the garden, drawn by moonlight and the hush of distant fountains. There are practicalities to attend to, too. Those who live far away quietly arrange for an escort. A couple of sturdy slaves with torches, or perhaps the company of another guest heading in the same direction. The city at night is beautiful, yes, but even the grandest senator knows to be cautious. You notice how the host, ever thoughtful, asks each departing guest about their journey home, remembering which streets are safe, which shortcuts best avoided. It's another layer of Roman etiquette, this blend of hospitality and streetwise care. As guests gather their things, there's a final exchange of compliments and thanks. Every guest, no matter how humble, is expected to praise the meal and the company. The host, with practiced modesty, deflects with jokes or promises that next time the wine will be even finer. The senator's wife teases that she will send along her cook for lessons. The poet insists he'll write a verse in honor of the honeyed figs, and the merchant pledges to bring some rare delicacy from his next voyage. Even the children, half asleep, Manage a drowsy thank you before being scooped up and bundled into waiting litters. As you wait your turn to say goodbye, you listen to the quiet hum of voices around you. Plans for tomorrow's games at the circus, whispered arrangements for future banquets, and the soft laughter of friendships newly minted or quietly rekindled. There's a gentleness to it all, a sense that the competition and performance of earlier hours have faded, replaced by something warmer and more real. You realize, with a little surprise, how much you'll miss these people when you step out the door. Your moment comes. The host takes your hand, not with the formal grip of arrival, but with a warmth that feels genuine. He thanks you for your stories, your laughter, your impressive ability to survive the reclining couch. You thank him in turn for the meal, for the welcome, and if you're honest, for the chance to feel part of something ancient and extraordinary. The hostess presses a small sweet into your hand, a candied date or a fig, a little taste of hospitality to take into the dark. It's a quiet custom, but a meaningful one. Every guest leaves with a token, a tiny reminder of the night's magic. The poet, who's somehow recovered from his earlier nap, stands by the door, serenading each departing guest with a line of impromptu verse. Some of the rhymes are surprisingly clever, others hilariously dreadful, but all are greeted with laughter and mock applause. "Don't let the cats eat your shoes," he calls after one merchant, "and may your dreams be free of peacock feathers," to a blushing matron. When your turn comes, he bows deeply and offers, to the guest who tamed the triclinium and made the olives sing, "May fortune follow you as surely as crumbs find a tunic." You laugh and the words stick with you as you step out into the cool night. Outside, Rome is a world transformed. The chaos of the day has melted into silence, broken only by the echo of your footsteps and the occasional distant song drifting from a tavern. Lanterns swing in the breeze, casting golden pools on the cobblestones. You draw your cloak tighter, feeling the gentle weight of exhaustion and the lingering glow of wine and laughter. Your stomach is full, your mind a gentle blur of images, lamplight on marble, laughter tangled in garlands, the flicker of shadows as friends became family for a few golden hours. You walk slowly, not quite ready for the spell to break. The air is cool and alive with scents of rosemary, pine and distant hearth smoke. Other guests pass you now and then, exchanging sleepy waves and promises to meet again. You see the senator and his wife disappear down a side street, their arms entwined, the merchant leading a little caravan of servants toward the forum, the poet already making friends with the night watchman. Even the youngest children, bundled and carried, mutter the final fragments of song before falling asleep. As you move through Rome's midnight streets, you notice the city's secret life unfolding. The baker prepares his ovens for morning, the first notes of bird song hint at dawn, and somewhere in the distance, a bell rings the hour. You pause, leaning against a column, savouring the sense that you are both utterly alone and gently held by the life of the city. In this moment, you understand why the Romans made such art of their feasts. Not merely for show, but to gather the people they love, to push back the darkness, to make memories that linger long after the last lamp has been snuffed. Your own house, when you reach it, seems smaller and quieter than you remember, but also warmer, charged with the residual joy of the evening. You slip inside, careful not to wake the household, and sit for a moment in the dim light, reliving the feast in your mind. You think of the stories told and the secrets shared, the small gestures of kindness, the near misses and the triumphs. You find yourself smiling, and then to your own surprise, laughing out loud at the memory of the senator's attempt to juggle figs. You put aside your cloak and the little sweet from your hostess, placing it carefully on your bedside table. You stretch, feeling every muscle softened by the long hours of company, and slide beneath your blanket. The world narrows to the cool sheets, the quiet of your room, and the distant soothing sounds of a city finally surrendering to sleep. But the Roman night isn't quite finished with you. As you close your eyes, your mind drifts back to the domus, the triclinium aglow with lamplight, the soft chorus of goodbyes, the gentle certainty that for a few precious hours you belong. You picture the faces of the other guests, hear the echo of the host's toast, and realize that this is what you'll carry with you long after the taste of honey and wine has faded. A sense of being known, of being welcomed, of having a place at the table. These are the true gifts of Roman hospitality. Before sleep claims you, there's one last ritual, so ingrained you perform it almost without thought. You whisper a quiet thanks to the gods, to Fortuna, to the host, to the city itself. You make a wish for tomorrow, hoping it will bring another meal, another story, another gathering of laughter in the firelit dark. And then finally, you surrender to the soft oblivion of dreams, the world outside dissolving into a gentle, timeless hush. Tonight, you think, as you drift away, you learn the secret at the heart of every Roman feast, that etiquette is only the beginning, that rules and rituals are just the scaffolding for something much more vital. The sharing of lives, the forging of friendship, the celebration of the everyday magic that turns a meal into a memory. And as you fall asleep, the laughter of your new Roman friends rings in your ears, promising that tomorrow and every tomorrow after, the table will always be waiting. And so, as dawn's first pink traces begin to glow behind the city's rooftops, your body stirs, though your mind lingers blissfully somewhere between the triclinium's last candle and the cool hush of your own sleeping quarters. But sleep, for Romans, is never a clean break from company. Even in dreams, the events of the feast swirl together, snippets of conversation, flashes of lamplight, the comfort of belonging. By the time you wake, it's as if you've carried a bit of the party into the new day, tucked under your eyelids like a secret gift. You stretch, feeling the mild ache of well-used muscles, an odd combination of contentment and the unfamiliar stiffness that only comes from hours of lounging sideways on a couch, eating and talking and laughing until your sides hurt. Rome outside your shuttered window is already busy. Wheels rumble, vendors call, and above it all the sky glows with the promise of a new day. Still, before you rise, you allow yourself a few more moments in the soft nest of your blankets, reliving every detail. Memory plays its tricks. One moment you're back at the table, deftly navigating the dance of olives and bread, feeling the collective heartbeat of dozens of voices. Another, you're on the steps outside the Dummies, a soft breeze carrying the scent of wine and garlands, as you and the poet trade parting jokes. What lingers isn't just the taste of the food, but the feeling, the sense of being woven into a tapestry of lives, of having slipped for one night into the glowing web of Roman friendship. There's a peculiar aftermath to Roman hospitality, a social morning after etiquette that's as important as anything performed the night before. You know what's expected. Even as you splash water on your face and lace your sandals, your mind is already composing the day's first obligation, the thank you note, or in Roman terms, the salutatio, a formal visit, a gift, or at the very least a few lines on a wax tablet to express gratitude. You must not only remember your host, but be remembered in turn. You find your best tunic, no stains, no wrinkles, and smooth your hair. If you're wealthy, perhaps you bring a small basket, figs, olives, maybe some sweetmeats from your own kitchen, a token of appreciation. If not, a heartfelt compliment will do. Romans value reciprocity as much as wit. The clever guest, you recall from last night's stories, always thanks their host, not just for the meal, but for the company, the conversation, the chance to be part of something larger than themselves. The city is alive with similar errands. You join a stream of other guests, some walking, some carried in litters, a few on horseback, each making their way to pay respects. There are familiar faces, the merchant, his eyes still heavy-lidded, but sparkling with memories of last night's laughter. The senator's wife, as stately as ever, but with a softer look about her as she exchanges pleasantries at a neighbour's gate. You see the poet, impossibly, already awake and holding forth to a small crowd outside a bakery, reciting lines about bread and dreams. He spots you, waves his stylus, and calls, another day, another verse, before launching into a new rhyme about the hazards of olive pits. Your own visit to the host's home is short but meaningful. The household is in gentle chaos. Servants sweeping, children chasing each other with the leftover garlands, the hostess instructing a cook about the day's meals. The host himself greets you with a warm if slightly weary smile. He asks about your journey home, listens to your thanks, and presses you to come again soon. You sense that last night's performance is over, replaced now by the genuine camaraderie of those who've shared good food and better stories. Before you go, the hostess presses a little packet into your hands. Some candied fruit, a second taste of generosity to carry through the day. As you walk back through Rome, you notice how the city itself seems subtly transformed by your new status. People greet you more warmly. There are nods and smiles from faces that were once unfamiliar. You're waved over at a street corner by the merchant, who insists you must try a new shipment of dates. Even the senator's son, never particularly interested in newcomers, calls you by name as he rides past on his father's horse. You have become, in the language of Rome, conviver, a guest. Yes, but now also a friend woven into the city's living social fabric. The day unfolds with a strange kind of brightness. You're invited for midday wine at the merchant's courtyard, where he regales you and a handful of others with tales from the docks. You're caught in the senator's wife's orbit at the baths, where she discusses both politics and perfume, her laughter echoing off the marble. The poet, true to his word, presents you with a scrap of verse. To the sleeper who feasted, the dreamer who dined, may the gods be as kind as the garlands you find. These encounters, small and large, are the echoes of last night's feast, proof that a Roman dinner is never just a night, but a doorway into the ongoing theatre of the city. By the afternoon, you find yourself reflecting on the subtle codes that bind Roman society together. Hospitality is more than a single event. It's a cycle. Last night's host might soon be your guest. Today's laughter might spark tomorrow's alliance, or just as easily, settle an old grudge. And always, there are rules. The small courtesies, the tokens of respect, the invitations owed and returned. Every act of friendship is a kind of investment. Every thank you a brick in the intricate edifice of social trust. You realize, too, how much effort goes unseen. The servants who cleaned the triclinium and laundered the linens, the hostess who planned every detail, the cook who coaxed miracles from olives, wheat, and honey, even the little rituals, the offerings to the household gods, the garlands strung above the door take time and care. In Rome, etiquette isn't just a costume you put on for a night, it's a language of generosity, gratitude, and remembering. As evening draws near and the day cools, the city returns to its everyday pulse. But you, changed by the experience, notice little details you once ignored. A whiff of cinnamon from a bakery, the sweep of a neighbor's broom, the laughter spilling from an open window. The world feels wider, brighter, filled with possibility. There are, inevitably, those who never quite learn the art, the guests who neglect their thank yous, who vanish after the feast and wonder later why their invitations dry up. But you, now schooled in the mysteries of the Roman table, know better. You send a second note perhaps, or invite a few of your new friends to your own humble meal. You honor the gods, you honor your hosts, and in doing so, you find yourself ever deeper in the rhythms of the city's life. Night falls, and as you slip into bed, you marvel at how quickly a single evening can transform everything. The triclinium's lamplight glows behind your closed eyes. You hear again the music, the stories, the rising peals of laughter, and you know that the real feast never ends. It lingers in memory, in kindness, in the promise of new gatherings to come. You have dined, you have learned, you have laughed, and in Rome, that's how friendships and legends are born. The rhythms of Rome, once unfamiliar, are now stitched quietly into your bones. In the days after the feast, you sense a new ease as you navigate the city's labyrinthine streets. The rituals of hospitality and etiquette, once sources of anxious calculation, have settled into the background music of your days. Your tongue still remembers the taste of honey and garum, your hands the comfort of fine linens and warm bread, your mind the afterglow of laughter and lamplit conversation. As you walk through the forum, or the bustling marketplaces, a gentle confidence accompanies you. You have found your place at the Roman table. Yet, as with all good things, the after effects of the banquet fade into routine. Your friendships, newly kindled in the soft focus of a long night, must now be tended in daylight. The memory of the triclinium, with its gentle whirl of food and voices, becomes not just a story to tell, but a way to live. There are new invitations, too. One from the merchant, now boasting of a fresh amphora of Iberian wine. Another from the senator's wife, who wants you to visit her garden and judge whether my roses outshine the poet's metaphors. The city itself seems more welcoming. Faces in the crowd meet your gaze with recognition, some with mischief, others with affection. You're part of the tapestry now, a single golden thread woven through the vibrant cloth of Roman life, but belonging is a living art. The rules you learned, how to recline, how to break bread, how to raise a cup or mend a blunder, are now a gentle choreography guiding you through new challenges. When you find yourself hosting, you remember your old host's deft touch, how he steered conversation away from argument, how he made a joke of mishaps, how every guest left with a sweet or a word of comfort. You practice these small magics, watching as your guests relax, laugh, and become a little more themselves. The feast, you discover, is not a performance but a gift. Its success is measured not in the extravagance of your table, but in the warmth of your welcome. You find yourself reflecting on subtle lessons too, those that no one teaches outright, but which become clear only in the lingering glow after the lamps are dimmed. Hospitality, for Romans, is more than a series of rituals. It is a kind of philosophy, a way of binding strangers to friends, friends to family, and even the proudest souls to something larger than themselves. Every act of etiquette, every toast, every well-timed joke or graceful recovery from a spilled cup is a thread in the great web of belonging. This art of inclusion is not just for special nights, but for every day. You greet your neighbors with warmth. You lend a hand where it's needed. You remember to pause, really pause, when someone shares a story. You invite newcomers to your own table, recalling your first nervous steps through your host's atrium. If a friend falters, you turn the moment into a laugh. If you stumble, you accept the gentle teasing that follows. Rome is a city built on memory, on rituals, and on the shared belief that even the smallest kindness can ripple outwards, shaping days and destinies. Of course, there are moments when the old anxieties return. You catch yourself second-guessing a gesture, or worrying whether your words hit the right note. But then you remember, every Roman, no matter how practiced, has dropped a grape, forgotten a line, or found themselves on the wrong side of a napkin disaster. These missteps are not only forgiven, but cherished. They become stories, woven into the collective memory of the table and retold on winter nights to fresh laughter. In this way, even blunders become part of the feast, a reminder that perfection is never the point. The cycles continue. There are more dinners, more gatherings, more chances to celebrate and to stumble. You watch young guests arrive, wide-eyed and uncertain, and offer them the same encouragement once given to you. The world spins on, fashions change, fortunes rise and fall, emperors come and go, but the table remains, always set for the next meal, the next story, the next weaving of lives. You notice too how the rituals of the feast echo out into the broader rhythms of Roman society. The courtesy and generosity learned at the table spill over into the marketplace, the baths, the streets. You spot your old host bargaining with a fishmonger, turning a gruff negotiation into a round of jokes that leaves both parties smiling. You watch the senator's wife sharing cuttings from her prized roses with a neighbor, her competitive edge softened by laughter. Even the poet, now a regular companion, spins tales at the tavern's counter, his sharp tongue now wielded mostly for fun. If you look closely, you see that the truckling in itself is only the heart of a much wider, deeper practice. Every street corner, every doorway, every shared loaf or borrowed cup of oil becomes part of the city's ongoing feast. Hospitality, you realize, is how Rome survives, how it makes peace with itself, how it weaves together its thousand rivalries and ambitions. And you, once an outsider, now help keep that great tradition alive. On a quiet afternoon, you stroll through the city's gardens, lost in thought. Children play among the cypress trees, their laughter rising and falling like music. Somewhere nearby, the merchant and the poet argue amiably about whether the best figs come from Capua or Ostia. You pause, close your eyes, and let the sunlight warm your face. In that gentle moment, you feel the deep truth of what you've learned, that every meal, every greeting, every joke or misstep is a kind of offering, a way of saying again and again, you are welcome, you belong. The day drifts to dusk. The city glows in the golden hour, the air scented with baking bread and distant pine. You make your way home, pausing now and then to exchange a word, a smile, a promise of another meal. Your heart is quiet, your steps light. You are content, and, as the lamps are lit and the city settles into its night song, you set your own table, lay out bread and cheese, pour a cup of wine, and watch as shadows dance on the wall. The lessons of the Roman table are with you, quiet as breath, enduring as stone. They shape your world, carrying you through darkness and light, through solitude and company, through every feast yet to come. So now, as the city's music fades and night settles softly around you, let yourself drift on these gentle memories. Feel the warmth of the Traclinium's lamps, the hush of laughter around the table, the safe weight of belonging that settles on your shoulders like a blanket. Every detail of that ancient feast lingers, the sweet taste of honey, the flicker of candlelight, the kind faces of your fellow guests, reminding you that wherever you are, the spirit of hospitality endures. Let your breath slow, your thoughts quiet, as you remember the small kindnesses, a shared loaf, a whispered joke, a moment of grace when someone turned a mishap into laughter. Let your mind wander to those golden evenings, when the world outside paused and all that mattered was the joy of being together. Even now, the lessons of that table guide you, a gentle reminder that every gathering, no matter how humble, holds the power to soothe, to unite, to carry us through the darkest night. You are home, you are safe, you are held by the ancient promise of welcome. Let the cares of your day slip away, replaced by the calm certainty that, in some corner of the world, a lamp is burning for you and a place at the table awaits. Allow the images to fade into soft shadows. Feel your shoulders relax, your breath deepen, and your mind ease into stillness. The feast is over, but the comfort remains. Good night, dreamer. Tomorrow is another story, and the table will be waiting. Sweet dreams.